Hello, everybody. I apologize about the tardiness there. I got thrown a second to start. I had to upload a video for somebody, and it took too long, and that threw me behind. And then we had some technical difficulties. Last time we did this, it worked perfectly. This time we were having awful internet connection, so it seems to be. But we figured out another way to do it, so there was a patch, so it took a while to get us all downloaded with the same programs to be able to do it, but that is a long story short to say, hopefully there are still people in here watching, but today I thought we could finally do the movie talk, and talk about some of our favorite films, and to join me today is my friend Alyssa, who has seen more movies than anyone I know. Alyssa, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm glad this worked out.
I'm glad it did too. I'm glad that. So what we ended up doing is, like, I was trying to do a different thing, but now we're using Skype, and that seems to be working very well for us. You guys don't understand. It was like I couldn't understand anything she was saying before. It was so delayed. It was like burp, burp, burp. It was like watching a 19 like a broadcast from like 1950 on television, and this just looks great. You look great now, so.
Yay. So happy. And
Yeah.
so happy to talk about this and not happy to talk about this because making this list was insane.
Yeah, so here's how I did it. Basically, I didn't. No, I thought what I would do is kind of. Okay. So going back, for those of you who maybe haven't joined in on all the live streams or anything like that, we said, I think during our like Oscar chat, that we wanted to do something that was like, we should talk more about like movies, and people were asking like what our favorite movies are, and I think we got into a thing where it's hard to like narrow it down, maybe necessarily to like a specific favorite. So I thought we could go through like maybe some categories and things like that, and just kind of chit chat about them. I've got some, and like I've got in my head, like I put this shirt on specifically for a reason, obviously. So
I put this for a reason too.
Oh, I knew that one was going to come up. So people are asking me, "You're not at Happily Ever After?" No, I am not. I already watched it during a preview, and I feel like it's probably insane today. And I realize that Tron opens tomorrow, and I completely forgot about that. Not forgot. But anyway, no, I'm not. So I am here to talk about movies because I love movies, and I need this today. I needed this today.
What are you drinking?
Just water today, too. It's so boring. It's in my Black Panther color-changing cup that I got at the Cinemark movie theater.
You?
It's got a little lid, which is what I like. So I know I was going to make a drink, but I had like a drink yesterday. I'm trying to do a thing where I don't drink 7 days a week. What are you drinking?
Well, it's my spring break, so I feel like...
Oh, no, girl, you earned it.
So it's, I think it's called an Aura in Me, and it's gin and lemon juice and elderflower liqueur and cardamom, which is my favorite spice, like ever.
Yeah.
And then I put a little bit of lavender syrup in there. So.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That sounds very like relaxing, like a spa drink.
And it's light.
I love. Yeah, I do too. I'm like really back into my gin phase again right now. I feel like I that's my like go-to here. Like I know we do the bourbon study with Jill on the Ampliverse YouTube channel, but I'm like, when I'm home, I feel like I go to the one I like to make right now for anybody who will come over, the people I've convinced. It's called like a cherry kiss. So it's gin, maraschino liqueur, a little bit of pineapple juice, which I normally don't like juices, like especially acidic juices in my drinks. I said acidic juices just so we make sure I wasn't stumbling there. And a little bit of grenadine, and there's cinnamon. I'll just pour some cinnamon right into this drink, and it kind of like all the acidity from the pineapple juice creates this like froth on the top of the drink. So then you do a little cinnamon on top, and it's so good. It's just like all the flavors come together. It tastes kind of like a pineapple upside down cake, I guess, but not overly, like, it's not like juice, like you know what I mean. I hate a juice forward drink.
Taste the gin in it, right? Like
Yeah.
still, yeah. I saw you make that the other night with Amber. It looked so good.
Yeah, it's. Oh yeah, I forgot I did that the other night. Maybe I had too many. But no, I know I'm gonna have like a cocktail tomorrow night and stuff and on Wednesday. So I was like, you know what? Maybe today I just won't. I almost made one though, which it definitely would have helped my stress level in getting this started. But yeah, I thank everybody who hung around with us for your patience and everything like that. Sorry for the delay, but now we've got it worked out. So now the next time I ever schedule anything ahead of time, we should be able to like actually catch up and do it. So, Maureen in this chat here, because Alyssa's seeing me through Skype, not through YouTube. Maureen is saying, Alyssa, that she saw the menu after watching our Oscars talk we did, and she loved it. So is thanking you for that recommendation.
I have been telling everyone about that movie, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like if it's any kind of person, because I always try to think what kind of person would like what kind of movie, but everyone I've recommended it to has loved it.
Yeah, I it's a wild movie.
It is.
For sure. Okay, Mums the World is also asking, I'm dying to know if you saw Banshees of Inisherin and what you thought, Ryno. I did see it. Alyssa, why don't you talk about your thoughts and feelings on it, and then I'll say how I felt about it.
Oh no, that makes me scared. So Banshees was my favorite film of last year, I think. And Martin McDonagh is my absolute favorite writer of all time. I started reading more of his plays. I've seen some of his plays on Broadway, and I thought it was a film that brought up all of these universal messages about death and why we're here, and what should we do with our time on earth. Are relationships more important? Is our art more important? And it was something that really did speak to me quite a bit, like the whole concept of what that movie was. And plus I think it's absolutely hysterical. My parents hated it though.
Wrong camera. I didn't hate it. I thought the acting in it was phenomenal. I took it as a comedy. Like, I thought it was funny. Like, I thought Barry, what is his name?
Yep.
How do you say it?
I think it's Keoghan.
Barry Keoghan. I thought he was excellent. Yeah. Excellent. It's hard because when I wanted to win, and but it was like, Barry's going to win an Oscar. There is no question someday he's going to win an Oscar. So I thought acting was phenomenal. I just didn't like it at the very end, basically. That was I think once the last bit, I'm going to tell you, so like spoilers here if you haven't watched it. I'll try to be non-specific. There's a donkey in the movie. Something does not go well for that donkey. And I basically lost me from there forward, which most movies do. He does
that a lot, Martin McDonagh. So I'm reading a play that he did. It's called The Lieutenant of Inishmore, and it starts off with a dead cat, and it's a dead black cat, and it's basically decapitated, and some of their brains are coming out. So,
good Lord,
that's sort of style. But you know me and cats. It basically is like a John Wick play.
Yeah.
The guy, mowed down everyone who killed the cat. I was like, this is my style. This is what I like. I like things than you, though, I think.
Did you see John Wick 4 yet, by the way?
No. I mean, we'll do. In the movie theater. 1,000,000%.
Oh, it's excellent. It's excellent. So, what was I going to say? There's also, which is making me very happy, is Terry in here is saying that she saw a preview of Air this weekend. I really am excited for that movie. So I'm looking forward to it. That's the one about Nike with Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and Jason Bateman is in it. And I think Ben Affleck also directed it, and so I'm very much looking forward to it. Oh, somebody in the chat said they accidentally stepped on a dead cat once and it traumatized them. That sounds like like therapy scarring trauma.
Absolutely.
Well, so let's talk about. We asked the chat to do some of their homework too. So we're gonna have you guys start. Alyssa, do you feel like you have a singular favorite movie? Like, is there a definitive one for you? Because I don't.
No, I feel like it's a tie, but not even a tie. It's like
I have like a basket. If you could give me a basket, I could throw. You know.
I actually brought my basket right here. This is it.
Well, so I was thinking about, like, I didn't know how to do it if it was going to be like movies that have meant the most to us, movies or whatever. I mean, you could hold on. Sorry, it's still volume issue between you two, Alyssa. Too quiet, Ryno too loud. Okay, I'm going to bring my volume way down. Not way down, but I'm going to bring that down so everybody can turn theirs up. Does this help? If you want to check with Alyssa's, maybe you can raise your volume down. I'll lower mine to match hers. That way, it's easier for people to bump up their volume if need be. Here, I'm trying to figure out how to raise it any higher than I have, but it seems like I can kind of only lower it. So, but Alyssa, why don't you take it away and tell us some of those movies in your pile?
Oh,
is there a theme?
I have it 1 to 10. Can you hear me?
Oh yes, I can hear you.
All right, just want to make sure. I know it stinks because I don't have a microphone that can be set up with the phone. I just have it for the computer. But for me, I was thinking about sort of like a mix between older and newer, and I did it the way where it's movies that meant a lot to me. And so kind of, I guess I'll just go through a couple that are more at the bottom of the top 10 list. But like, I would say Singing in the Rain is my second favorite musical of all time. And it's not the deepest story of all time, but whenever I'm sad, I just put it on and I feel a lot better. Gene Kelly's like my very favorite dancer. I love him so much. And then I got this. I actually want to show you this.
Wait.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, I have never seen Singing in the Rain. And I know that's wild because everyone's always like, it's about making movies, right? And I didn't know that until recently because I thought it was literally about singing in the rain. And I was like, boring.
No, it's about where it was like silent films to talkies. That's what the whole premise is. And I actually teach this. This is one of the films that I teach that I absolutely love. And it hits well with certain people and other people not as well because it's older. It's a little bit cheesy at time, but it's like one of those movies where I feel sad, I put it on, like automatic every time. And like Damien Chazelle basically based a lot of Babylon off of this movie. Like he references this movie just constantly in that movie Babylon and in La La Land. It's almost constant.
I mean, I haven't seen Babylon. I've seen La La Land, but So it's on my list. I know it's embarrassing. Debbie Reynolds, come on now.
Like you could watch this so easily, and that leads into literally this movie also, Drive, which you can see so easily.
Wait a minute. Why does Drive lead into? Why does Singing in the Rain lead into Drive? Is it just 10 to 9, or is there a theme right there?
It's 10 to 9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then both because you haven't seen both of them.
Yeah, I know, and you're calling me out, but I did move. Alyssa sent me Drive, and it is literally on top of Serial Mom before Trey brings it up in here. Those two are sitting on top. Those are going to be my movies, except for I also saw that the Tetris movie came out, and I was like, well, I'm going to watch Tetris before I watch the two of those. But I am going to watch it, I promise you. I'm going to do it. But I want to be like committed fully in the zone because I owe it to you 100% to just sit there doing nothing else and just enjoying it with a good cocktail and a little bucket of popcorn.
I appreciate that. So what are some of you?
Well, what is it about Drive that you like? I'm just curious. Like, why is it? Because you do talk about it a lot.
it's like a style. It's like a feeling. You know how some movies have, I don't know, it's a very specific plot. This is not about the plot. This is so about the tone and the vibe and the feeling. And, you know, when Ryan Gosling and Nicholas Winding Refn started making this movie, they got into a car and they put on 80s music and they were like, yeah, this is the movie. So it's got this really like synth 80s vibe. It's
Ooh.
very slow paced, and then it'll be like shoot up with crazy violence out of nowhere, and then it'll be really slow paced, and then just insane bouts of violence. And it's, do you know what it's about?
Like, isn't the guy, like the driver, isn't he like a hitman or something like that? And he is trying to keep some woman safe, sort of.
Sort of. He's a getaway driver.
Getaway
So,
driver,
like,
yeah. Okay.
like if you give me 5 minutes, I'll let you do whatever you got to do, and then come back, and then drives away. But if they don't come back in the 5 minutes, he just takes off without them. But then he's also a stunt car driver in movies as well. So it also has like movies in it. And then he's protecting this woman. Oscar Isaac's in the movie. He's so good in it. And it's Carey Mulligan. So it's like,
What? Oscar Isaac is in the movie?
yes, he plays Standard.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
No, he's like the Standard car edition, and Ryan Gosling's supposed to be the souped up version. Symbolism.
Well, I remember I was at UCF when that movie came out, and I remember them using frames from the movie in a class. Because what year did that come out? 2012?
Yeah, 2012 or
Yeah,
11.
Okay, because I graduated 2014, not because of my age, but because of how long it took me. But I remember there was a thing, like a scene with him with a hammer in the air, and they paused it, and they were like, it was a lot about talking about shot composition, because it was basically saying about how the angle of his hand with the hammer and like makes the line directly down, and it's like, it was all about how you knew where to draw your eyes to and all this stuff. So it was like, it was fascinating. That's why it was a movie where I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this. I'm going to find something. Also, you spoke about the soundtrack. Is that I think they did a thing with that movie too, where like they played it in London or somewhere, and a bunch of like modern bands added music to it. Like they reloaded it with a different score or something at one time, because I think Bastille has a song that is called like Driver or something like that, and it's supposed to be about that movie, and I think it was used at the thing. But I was really into Bastille for a second, so.
No, I actually really like them too. You just brought me back. I hadn't thought of them for a very long time, but yeah, that definitely brought me back. But I also, it uses a lot with like the quadrant system. The film is where you expect for a character to go, and then they like end up in a different place, and your eye is constantly moving. It's one of my favorite films just to watch from that artistic like cinematography perspective. It's so gorgeous. Like even just like the spurts of blood and how it like will go on people's faces. It's so beautiful, if that's the right word. Looking.
I mean, sure. Yeah. I didn't do like a top 10. I mean, I've got ones that I'm like very specific, but like, okay, so I wore the shirt because I feel like there's movies that like sometimes I think you don't even realize till like years later that like those movies have become like your favorite movies, you know? And one of those that happened for me specifically as I was like at UCF and finishing like film school and stuff was E.T. I like loved it when I was a kid, obviously, and it was crazy because I'd always be like, when you'd say, well, Spielberg, what's your favorite Spielberg, you know, I'd feel like, well, I love Jurassic Park, I love, you know, I have a very my dad's father, who passed away when I was in like fourth grade. The one memory, like real strong memory I have of him is I remember being there because my parents are divorced, and I would go to my dad's on Christmas Eve and my mom's on Christmas Day. Like I'd slept, you know, I lived with my mom. So my dad brought us to his dad's house on Christmas Eve where we used to spend it there. And I remember he was like, okay, so you're like, we're taking you to the movies and we're gonna go see Hook, and it's about. Do you know what it's about? And I was like, no. And I was 5 years old, I think, and I was just like, and there's like, it's a movie about what if Peter Pan grew up. And I was like, I don't know who Peter Pan is. Or like he was telling me about Neverland, Neverland. And I was just like, I was kind of like, okay, I don't know. Like there was another version of Peter Pan. I watched the Mary Martin one, but I don't think I like connected the two, or I didn't watch that till after this one. Because I think Hook came out in like 1990 or 1990. Yeah, I think it was like Christmas 1990 or something. Mm-hmm. But it had to be that or 91, right? Now I don't know. I think it was 90.
So bad with dates.
But regardless, I remember he like took me out on the back porch and like pointed up at the stars and was like, "You see this star? It's like that second one to the right and straight on to morning." And like he explained the whole thing to me, and I was like, "This is incredible." And I was like, "How do I get to this place?" Like, you know what I mean? And so like, and then obviously, I grew up and I feel like I'm devastated when Robin Williams passed away, and I think there's just he was always around in my house. It was like one of those people. Like Robin Williams was always around. You know, we had Mrs. Doubtfire we clung to. My mom always loved like Mork and Mindy, and so it's like it was just one of those presence that was always there. It was 1991. I think Trey is telling me in the comment section, because I was like, I think I was in first grade. If it came out in the Christmas, I always know what grade I was going in by the last digit of the year. 1991, I was going into first grade. 92, I was going into second grade. So like September of 92 was my beginning of second grade. But so I remember also writing about it in like, we had like those paper lined like journals that were stapled together. And remember the poster for Hook was like the fancy cursive like K that looks like an R. So I wrote about how my grandfather took me to see a whore that weekend. Because I wrote it how it looked to me, and I would get up and be like, "This doesn't look like the word I'm supposed to say, but this was on the poster, so I guess this is what it's called." So I told everybody in class about how my grandfather took me to see a whore. But I love that movie. I know it's not Spielberg's like best, but there's just the score is beautiful, and I feel like because the older I get, the more of like an adult child I become, the more it's like, I love that movie about like, what do we lose as we grow up, and how do you keep it, how do you keep that safe, and how do you get that back, you know? And it's kind of crazy, like, you know, not everything lands the way it should in the movie, but I remember, I don't know, I just like, one of my favorite shots was when Rufio comes up with the gold sword and holds it, and it almost hits him in the nose, and the camera like pans back up, and his head comes right there, and it's got that light refraction, and he's just like, "You're dead, jolly man." And then that next scene with the line in the sand like moves me to tears when the little kid's like, "There you are, Peter." So that's definitely one for me. But E.T. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What? Have I heard what?
It's a band. It's called It's called Pogo. It's like a thing you can listen to on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
The Hook, that song that they took from Hook.
Oh, no. I had no idea.
Oh, my God. So they basically just take parts of the movie and they remix the whole thing to turn it into this song. And it's such an incredible song.
I'll have to check that out, because I did use some like pogo songs for personal videos like a couple of years ago. Like when I was like trying to practice slow motion videos, there was one I used, and it was using songs from like Alice in Wonderland. So I will have to check that out. The Wandering Panda is saying they've never seen Hook, but it sounds interesting. Is it on Disney Plus? It's not a Disney movie. It's I'm pretty sure it's Universal Studios, but it's Touchstone. No, or not Touchstone. It's an Amblin movie, but I'm pretty sure Universal would have made it, because I think that's where he was set up at that time. But and then Kim says, "I lost my marbles. Lost my marbles." Plus that scene where Hook like isn't there but is there, where like the door blows open and the children were screaming. That part always, like, I'm like, this is intense. Like, there's this long, I think there's great Steven Spielberg shots in that movie. Like when Peter and Moira show back up with Wendy at the house, and it like is a close up on them, but the camera is like pulling through the broken glass in the door, and he comes up, and it's like his hands on the door, and then you can see there's carved wood lines, and it's just, and then his hand hits the choreography of the camera for so many scenes is literally one of those things that's like, that is what makes Steven Spielberg like a special type of storyteller, because he sells so much with just so little. Sometimes, like, the camera is a choreographed actor as well, but somebody actually, I'm going to show a picture real quick here. I'm just going to pull it off the wall. Hold on.
I loved Hook when I was a kid. Just like hearing you talk about it and hearing those scenes. Oh my God.
So my friend, I made a friend. He, this is all colored pencil. Like, he's incredible. We did an art swap, and so during quarantine, and he did this, and he is just so talented. 2020, right in the corner here. Yeah, this was his like first experiment with colored pencils too, because he usually does like regular. It's gorgeous. I love it. I love it because I've always wanted something to be like, that was the moment where you were like, I love movies. But I.
So was that for you? You feel like Hook was the moment that got you?
I'll put, I think Paul's art, I think he has an art Instagram. I'll put it in the description. I'll have to double check. I mean, he sends me photos he's always working on. Somebody asked in the chat, sorry. I don't know. I did write about it. For my college essay about that being the movie, and I don't think it went over very well for anywhere. But I don't know. That was definitely the start of just that fascination with that sort of, like, I saw Man Fly, like that sort of magic. And then, it continued on, obviously, with Jurassic World, which I just think is just one of those movies that is like, I mean, there's no argument that it's not a phenomenal movie. I am one of those people where I think we need to make a retroactive Oscar category that goes back and awards some movies that have maintained, like that they are like still present in the pop culture zeitgeist, so because they are so good. Because like, I don't feel like Jurassic Park ever got the credit that it truly does deserve. Like, it changed everything about how we watched movies in terms of special effects, but it was like, it's just one of those where like, the story is great. It is a great adapted screenplay of the book too, like phenomenal.
That is actually my number 6 movie, Jurassic Park.
Ah.
Yeah. So funny you brought it up, but yeah, that was the movie for me that changed the way I saw movies. And I can just, like, I literally remember being in middle school, seeing this movie, and then waiting for the bus to come and pick us up at school. And I was talking to my best friend, and I kept saying to her, like, no, you have to come and see this movie with me. Like, this was the best movie I've ever seen. And I went like 3 more times to the movie theater, and I took everyone who would go with me to see this movie. And it was just, I couldn't believe how real it was and how emotionally I connected that I was to the characters and the special effects, and how scared and the velociraptors. Oh my God,
yeah.
That killed me. Those killed me. But yeah, that's one of those movies that just means a lot to me from when I was younger. And it reminds me of being a kid. That and The Little Mermaid, because that's the first movie I saw where I remember seeing it, and my grandpa took me. And it's this very clear memory that I have with my grandfather. And, he passed away when I was 12 years old. So I don't have, like super solid memories all of the time, but I do remember that one perfectly. So it means a lot, that movie.
Yeah, I I think it's I have a little bit of, I have one with like Aladdin. Like my aunt and her friend took me, and I remember being late, and then I remember we got the VHS and all this stuff. Like that era of the Disney movies with like Little Mermaid. I feel like we lived because we had like Lion King. That we had like the prime animated experiences. I feel like. I do also like going back to E.T. For me, E.T. is one of those movies that I feel like when I was a kid, it was like, oh, cool, this kid's got a friend that's an alien. And then, like now, like I remember watching it. Like I watched I watched Jaws, and then I watched this, and I watched something. I was on like a Steven Spielberg kick a couple of years back while I was in film school still, and I remember just being like kind of so emotionally moved, really seeing the mom's part of the story. Like, because my mom is a single mom, and having that, realizing this story, this like multi-tiered story that it's sort of telling about this family that's really going through a divorce. Because I remember just like, I responded very auditorily to that movie. Like there's a lot of like quotes, but it's just, it's not even just the quotes. It's just the way, the like sound of the delivery of the line specifically, like always stuck with me. I watched it so much that it feels like that sort of, people talk about like the creak in a stair that they always remember stepping on. It's like that sort of a thing for me. It's like hardwired into my brain, like when the mom's just like, a pizza. Who said you guys could order a pizza? So it's like sort of this weird stuff that's like, I don't know. But that movie to me is just incredible because also the way it like grows. I think like you can see it as a kid and then like you get there to be older, but then also, it's so like devastating at the end. Like,
I could cry.
Yeah. When the mom falls to like her knees when she's watching Elliot with the kid, and like I just caught the end of it. They had like a ton of Steven Spielberg movies on the Delta flights like over the holidays, and so I would watch them all, and like I like just got to that end of E.T. and I'm just like, God, when he's just like, come, and Elliot's like, stay, and you're just like, I think even more as an adult, it breaks my heart even more to be like, not because when I was a kid, I don't think I truly understood that they had connected literally to each other, and that's why Elliot was so sick when E.T. was sick, and like I got it, but I didn't get it as a kid, so it was like a literal connection that they also broke, and then it's just like, I now reading about how they filmed it too, is that like Spielberg chose to try and film that movie as close to chronologically as he could because he wanted the kids to experience the story in order for a bigger emotional impact, but he also thought it would be easier for the kids, and because I think that's really the first movie he dealt with a lot of kids, because I mean there was kids in Close Encounters and Jaws obviously too, but they're not, I feel like they're not as like, they're not the center point, of the story. But I just like I don't know if you know about the thing with the Elliot audition either, where like Elliot, yeah, right? And like Steven Spielberg like was like crying when he was watching him do the thing. There's a lot of really interesting, like, it wasn't supposed to be Reese's Pieces. It was supposed to be, I think, M&M's. And the person was like, no, absolutely not. And so, somebody lost their job because that movie put Reese's Pieces on the thing. But so there's like so much to the filmmaking of it. I never realized either that the majority of the movie, you actually don't see any adult faces. The movie was shot at the level of the kids' faces. So it's all at their height, E.T., their height. So the only people you see is like Peter Coyote at the end when he shows up with the keys, and then you start to see other adults. But before that, it's like all at their height. So that's why you only ever see the keys on the wrist. That's why you don't see like the teacher's face or anything like that. And like, so it's like a lot of like subconscious film choices in there, which are crazy. But my favorite part of that movie is the Halloween part where you guys look great. And I'm like, thank you. And he goes, thank you. I don't know why, it just makes me laugh.
The way he was moving around with the sheet on him.
Yeah. I love it. And I love when he sees Yoda. He's like, home.
Oh Oh my God, you're making me want to rewatch it. I have that on 4K, and it
Oh,
looks great.
Because now, hey chat, because now I have a PlayStation 5,
Yeah.
I officially have a 4K high definition video player, but I only have a couple of movies on it because it was basically whatever movies were cheaper or the same price, I would buy the 4K knowing like someday I'll probably upgrade. My TV is only a 1080 TV though, so that'll be the next thing. But I have like The Batman on 4K. Guess what garbage movie I have? The Eternals on 4K. I don't know why. But a couple of... I basically expanded it a lot. Jungle Cruise, Cruella, West Side Story. They were all like... Target was clearancing all their like Target 4Ks, so I got a ton one time for like $10 each or whatever, and I was like, oh, heck yeah. But anyway,
Getting a good. You know, there's a website I use. It's called Groove, GRUV, and they have 4Ks on sale all the time.
Oh, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I got Nope on 4K for like $12.
Oh.
Yeah, and I saw it last night. Oh my God, it looked amazing on 4K. With
Yeah.
the IMAX.
I think when I move, I'll definitely the new house tree would be a new TV because it's one of those where I'm like kind of stuck with the one I have unless something happens to it for now.
It makes a difference though, and I can't play. I was never that kind of person to say that, but get it after the Batman debacle,
The fiasco of your movie theater, yeah.
But the 4K TV kind of did make a big difference. So.
Well, I want to do what you did and commit to like a large-sized one to be like, okay, now we have a really good experience to watch this on.
Yeah, it's like a movie. The separate room is dark. It has, a sound bar and things like that.
Okay, lay it on me. Give me some more movies.
Oh, you will not like the next one.
Oh no, if it's women talking.
No, it's not women talking, but it's The Lighthouse, which is, I think, another movie you never saw, right?
I did not see this movie. I have heard it was basically insanity. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
It's another movie where it's like a vibe.
Oh, I've seen clips and like stuff of it, and it seems wild. Who's the person who directed that? What else did they direct?
It's Rivers, who did The Witch and who did The Northman.
That's right. Okay, yeah.
I like his style. Like, I like The Witch a lot, and I like The Northman a lot. But this, I felt like I was, it like reminded me of a really warped Disney World. I felt like I was so immersed in it and immersed in the world and the noises, the score, the sounds in the movie are so distinctive. And it's, I think it's a 4:3 aspect ratio. So you have the very thick bars on the side and you feel like you are getting like squished in the story. And it is gorgeous looking. The black and white is just... It's one of the most beautifully shot black and white movies I've ever seen.
It might be one of those... What?
No, I was going to say, plus it's Robert Pattinson and William Dafoe just being insane. Insane.
I think that's kind of a big draw for me, is that, like, I think eventually maybe one dark and stormy night I'll put it on to be able to, like, watch it. But I'll wait for when I've committed to having a better viewing area experience,
It is that kind of movie. It's the kind of movie where you want to have a totally dark room, great sound, because the sound is such a huge component to what the movie is. And they're doing a 4K version of the movie through A24. So A24 has been putting out a lot more like of their films, and they're more expensive, but they're so pretty looking. They're the most gorgeous looking movies, and they have a full commentary with Robert Eggers, and he's never done that before. So this movie is not
for everyone.
It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. But it is so atmospheric, I guess, is the best way to put it. And the performances are really it's the movie that made me realize that Robert Pattinson was actually a good actor. And then I went back and I watched a lot of his movies and I was like, oh, he actually is better than I ever thought he could possibly be. So
Better than Edward Cullen? I don't know.
I am it's a bold statement. I actually did go back and watch all the Twilight movies because of the lighthouse. And you know what? They were fun.
Well, my thing with those movies is like I got into it when it was the thing, and like I hated the first book, hated the first movie. I don't know why somebody was like, just read, there's werewolves the next one, and they were like, you like it, and I was like, I started and I was like, okay, I like this one better. Then I saw that she had written scenes in the books around like Muse songs, and Muse was my favorite band, so then it was like I could tell what scenes were like what songs, so I was like, okay, now I'm getting into it. And then I had like a huge crush on Taylor Lautner. Not like creepy, but I was just like, I love Jacob, but I was just also like, this is a child. I think he was 18 when the movie came out or something like that. I don't remember, but I was just like, oh, this is an attractive cast of people. Like, but the Eclipse, I actually genuinely enjoy. Like, I like the score. I like what it looks like. I like how they filmed it. I thought New Moon is solid in terms of the movie it delivered. I thought Eclipse was like the best one of the franchise. I think in terms of
my second or third.
Eclipse is the third. It's Bryce Dallas Howard as the girl from the first two.
I love her.
Yeah. So give me another one. Give me another movie, since you have a bit more.
Well, you know I love Alfred Hitchcock. I think, yeah, you knew that, right? Yeah. So I think my favorite is Vertigo.
Did you hear that they are? Did you hear? Yeah. Who's doing it though? I forgot who it is. Is it? It's somebody famous. Is it somebody famous or? Who?
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, but didn't they say the director yet or no?
Oh, I don't know. I only heard him.
I would love to see Robert Downey Jr. in that like Jimmy Stewart role. I think Robert Downey Jr. is a perfect choice to play that role. I don't know. It's one of those things where you're like, this is listed as AFI's best movie ever made, and so I feel like that's a bold thing. I'm not gonna lie though, it's not my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie, and I fell asleep in the middle of it.
No, I could. You know what? Here's a movie where when I saw it the first time, I did not love it. I liked it. I thought it was good. And then I kept rewatching it and studying it, and I saw more and more. And it was one of those movies. It's not the most entertaining of his movies where you watch it the first time, like a North by Northwest, which I think is just like immediately captivating. Notorious, I think, is really just like you're in it the whole time. But Vertigo, it's messed up. It has a messed up story.
Oh,
it flips halfway, which I think a little awkward feeling. You like get the twist halfway through, and it takes the suspense away in a way. But
the ending is wild too. Yeah. Like you get to the end and you're like, oh my god, is that how it just ended? Like, yeah. I remember that part being like so confused, being like, that did not just happen. Like, but that also, for people who might not know, that very much invented that dolly shot. That yeah. Which is one of my thoughts. Oh, I love in Jaws when he's sitting on the beach and it does that. And people, I think a lot of people modernly will think of Jaws maybe when they see that, because I feel like whenever they show a clip of Jaws, they always show that scene on the beach. But it does come from Vertigo, which is cool.
Yeah, he was the first one to do it. And I think he uses that shot in Psycho, right? When Arbogast is falling down the stairs. You remember?
Yeah, I don't know if that shot is actually that, or if it's just like a dollied with a rear projection shot. So I don't know. Is that technically that shot? I don't know.
No, a dolly zoom would be like you're moving the camera forward as you're zooming out at the same time, or vice versa.
I think for me, I know it's such a cliche thing to say, but Psycho is like, I remember because I took a class on Alfred Hitchcock too, which was like one of my like things. So, oh, did you?
I didn't.
Yeah, we had to read. There was like 3 books or whatever, and one of them's like 52 Weeks with Hitchcock or something like that. But so Strangers on a Train. I love Strangers on a Train. I think Strangers on a Train is also one of those where you're like, this is a wild ending because like there's a carousel that is spinning out of control. That is like that part is one of those where you're like, I don't think this would happen. Like, but I do think that idea of that movie, the way it was like filmed, with like there's this like guy who's like kind of innocent but not really, and he like steps into the shadows, which are like framed as like bars that make, implies guilt and stuff like that. And like there's a lot of that like expertise filmmaking on him there. But Psycho for me is like just one of those where I know it's not like in terms of like, up for debate how much of it did he actually direct versus like and also like the fact that it was really just like to prove something more than it about being a good film. But I love the dialogue in Psycho so much, and I still think it's one of those movies, like every time I've seen it in a room with people who haven't seen it, there's always somebody who yells at one part.
I live my life with that because I teach that once a year, so I get to watch it.
Do kids react to it?
Oh my! I have one girl who is obsessed with Anthony Perkins. I mean, to the point of she's probably seen it about 15 times at this point, and bought me the poster for my classroom and all of that. They like it. They don't think it's scary at all. Although I had a couple of kids who actually did get scared and covered their eyes in certain scenes. But they do, all in all, they really, really like it.
I think it's, for me, the part that I've seen that always gets somebody to like kind of jump a little bit is what is his name? You said it earlier. Arbogast, when he goes up the top of the stairs and the camera's looking down, and and the mother comes out, and it's just so direct and abrupt, and it's kind of like, it's not even like creeped in, so you don't really expect it. And you're just like, wow, like, like I get that, like that jump is cool, but I just love. I mean, Anthony Perkins is like delivery with Janet Leigh in the when they're just talking with the owl, and the whole, just like, we all go a little mad sometime. And have you heard the song where Bastille uses the lyrics? He uses not the lyrics, he uses the sound bites from that conversation. He does a cover. Bastille does a cover of No Scrubs, and the in-between parts of No Scrubs are that dialogue between Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins, and it is like one of the best things. I think it's called No Angels or something. But you got to listen to it. It's so good. It's because Bastille loves movies.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, that scene with the sandwiches and they're in the back with all the birds of prey, and it is just the most perfectly shot sequence, I feel like, ever.
It's just like, because like, like he's the bird. It's the whole. It's like so layered, but I just love the whole like, oh, you've got to have a friend. Oh, I say it doesn't bother me, but it does. And you're like, oh God, like I'm unsettled.
Yeah, and then the way the like angle just shifts immediately once she starts talking about his mother, and it goes from like, it looks like the birds are almost attacking him for a second, and then he's like, he is the predator at that moment. It's such smart filmmaking. Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a link to that song later, so you can hear it. But that Psycho would be in my like, when were we to just continue your list, and then I think maybe I'll do a couple like, what's your favorite comedy? What's your favorite thing? But
I mean, the next one actually would be one of my favorite comedies, which is, but it's old. It's called The Philadelphia Story. It's from, I want to say 1940, and it has my 3 favorite older movie actors. So it's Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. And Katharine Hepburn is one of my favorite actresses of all time. Joe, my husband, he bought a baseball card of Katharine Hepburn. That's how much we both love her. She's my idol, and it's the funniest movie. Have you ever seen it?
No, actually I haven't, but I've heard of it. I'm familiar with the movie.
So it's when I saw it for the first time, I thought it was like Aaron Sorkin dialogue for a comedy from 1940. It is so sharp. It is so fast paced. The chemistry between Jimmy Stewart and Katharine Hepburn is unlike anything. I feel like those two together in a movie are just like actual fire. And it has a ton of lines that like my husband and I will just like say around the house all of the time. And there's a really there are certain characters who are now I would get very inappropriate, like Uncle Willie in the story, who just goes around and it's like pinching girls' butts out of nowhere. And it is a very funny screwball comedy, like genuinely funny, not just old movie funny.
I was like, you know what old movie I like that's like that quick, witty, that dialogue that snaps is My Girl Friday?
His Girl Friday.
His Girl Friday, yes, okay. I'm like...
Another one like that, although this is funnier. Like, His Girl Friday gets heavy with, like, the guy who's accused of murder and,
Yeah, that's true, yeah, it does.
That's not like an outright comedy, whereas this is... It's a remarriage story, which was really popular in the 1940s because, of course, they didn't want people getting divorced, so they had a very specific genre.
I love wild movies like that. Like, you know what I watched and like what's really into was All About Eve, and I was shocked when you watch All About Eve because basically Karen Walker from Will and Grace is the character of I can't remember the main character's name that isn't Eve.
I haven't seen it for a while, but
poor Eve, the one who said, "Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night." It's crazy because it's about such a strong-willed, loud, vivacious like woman who is like her confidant is like very clearly a gay man. I don't even know if they actually say it in the movie or not, but I feel like they did to a point where you're like, they're basically like, no, this man is a homosexual. Like, and I was like, I can't believe with the film, with the, whatever that board was that used to censor everything. Yeah. I'm always like, I can't believe this movie exists. It's one of those, like, sometimes I think it's fascinating because I don't know that everyone knows how controlled everything was, and why personally I often have a lot of times watching anything from before the American New Wave movement, which would be like Mrs. Robinson. What the heck am I thinking of?
The Graduate.
The Graduate, yeah, because for me it was like it wasn't till around then that they broke up the sort of like censoring of so much stuff, like not being able to have a toilet, no beds together, like you said, no divorce. Like, what the hell? Like,
no. But what's interesting is watching movies from this time period that find ways around it, and that's why I feel like it's worth watching. Like, I saw the other night for the first time, I saw The Night of the Hunter, which is with Robert Mitchum, and it was one of these movies where I was like, I actually can't believe this got made. I can't believe it got through the Hays Code. I watched Some Like It Hot, and I can't believe
I was going to say that was the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
And it's just so genuinely funny, and sometimes, not often, like obviously I like movies that have no restriction or censorship or anything, but sometimes it actually benefited the movie, like certain movies, because the directors were so certain to find a way around it. And I feel like Billy Wilder was one of those directors.
I feel like Orson Welles, it might have been Orson Welles who said, the absence of limitations is the enemy of art. So being like, because his favorite thing used to always be like, he was very much like Hitchcock in that way, I feel like, where he's like, okay, well, watch me get around it.
Did you ever see Frenzy? It's a Hitchcock movie.
What's it called?
Frenzy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that's from the 70s, and that's after the Hays Code, and there were just like boobs everywhere. It really
is that the one in color? Is that does that like one close to when he died, right? Or Family Plot was his last one, right?
That's the last one, but I think this is like the second to last or third to last, and it was disconcerting because you're so used to just seeing his movies imply a lot that actually seeing it with his movies specifically kind of felt weird, oddly dirty. Like,
it's wild.
I No, I didn't like it.
Well, I like the movie Hitchcock. If you haven't seen it, where it's Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren playing the wife, and like I think it's fascinating too, because then you're like, ugh. Like saying that also makes it be like, oh God, he was definitely a womanizer. Like
He was very for work with,
uh,
especially what was it, Tippi Hedren? That was
Tippi
the
Hedren,
worst.
yeah. I was gonna say, because wasn't he like very like gross, like with like in terms of basically like ruining her career? I feel like.
Yeah, he held on because she was part of the studio system, and so he basically held on to her and didn't like let her make any other movies. And so her career, which it was like she was in The Birds, and then he had her in the movie Marnie with Sean Connery, and then after that, she wasn't in anything.
I think they talk about that. I think there's like a little throwaway part about that in Hitchcock too, because he does talk about that and how much he didn't like another one of the women that was in the other things because he blamed her for like upset. I think it's the one who played the sister in Psycho or something. He had a problem with her.
He had a problem with her. Yep.
Yeah. Um,
Everyone,
yeah.
every woman,
Well, it's
except
it's for who?
Grace Kelly. He like always left her alone because I think he looked at her as perfect,
Mm,
which
it's
is
kind
its
of
own other
gross.
brand of.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, ugh.
Yes.
What else you got?
Oh, I feel like I'm saying so many of my, but The Shining is
Oh,
definitely.
if okay, so I think this is a great segue because I feel like I want to be like, what's our favorite horror movies? What number is Shining on your list?
I have it at 4.
Okay, so how many more above these are horror movies?
None.
Okay, perfect.
One could do, but not. But it's not really.
I wanted to say like what your favorite horror movies are because I feel like that's such an interesting category too because some stuff isn't always like it's not about scare. It's not what's the scariest movie you've seen. It's just like what's the classified horror movie. And The Shining is 100% one of my favorites, no question.
I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. It's like right behind me, like on the shelf over here. Oh, actually, I lied. It's downstairs because it's in like another area. But I don't even have a way to watch movies downstairs, so I have no idea. But it's on a shelf in my room. But The Shining is like a watch once a year movie for me.
I agree, and it's like, and every single time, it never loses the feeling behind it, and just that one part with Danny on the bicycle, just going through the hallways, and how long that lasts, and getting it like what you said before, like from a kid's perspective, that we get
Hmm.
so much of from a child's perspective. It's and I know Stephen King hated this movie. I really don't care because I feel like this is a better version than the book. I've read the book, and the book is very good, but I don't know. There's something about this movie and the dialogue and Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson is probably one of my favorite older movie actors, and I know he's, occasionally he wasn't the nicest guy. They were awful to Shelley Duvall in this movie. I
Yeah.
mean, awful. Um, but I feel like I would have to blame the director on that a little bit more than him.
I don't just blame like yes, 100%. I mean, what's his name? Who died?
Kubrick.
Kubrick, yeah. I feel like historically, that's a person who you're like, well, I bet that was never fun for anybody to work with him.
Nope.
But that was also, I feel like that was of that time where the system is also to blame because it was very much in vogue to be a problematic person and harass a lot of times the women more than the men, but to get that like purity, like it's the whole thing with Francis Ford Coppola and how he made Marlon Brando's in that one too. What is it? Apocalypse Now, and yeah, and it's like I hate that. That does not make an artist that does not, cruelty does not make. I do not believe, and I get the idea of you're like trying to make this authentic thing or whatever, but like I don't know. We've learned so much about how trauma goes with people for so long that it's just one of those where it seems it's difficult, it's crazy, and it's hard to look back and blame individuals when it was like celebrated as part of the system, and and we weren't alive, but those who partook at that time, you are a part of the problem as well, which we're all guilty of in some ways or another, but I think it's like a career-defining movie, obviously, for Jack Nicholson. Like, I think, honestly, he's been in so many things, but I think that's like probably the one where you're like, that's the Jack Nicholson movie. But like, I agree with you. My grandmother always used to tell me, and my grandmother didn't watch like a lot of movies or anything like that, but she was like, Jack Nicholson is one of the greatest actors, and I agree with her. Like, in my lifetime, I feel like it was so. I almost wish he did more here at because I mean he's still alive, but I don't think he's doing anything else. But he just like, I mean, he is As Good as It Gets is one of those movies where I remember, I think it came out, I was in like 4th grade, and I remember watching it and like knowing, like, that's another one of those movies actually where I think I don't often think in terms of citing it for that, but I remember watching that movie and watching it and watching it and watching it over and over because it was just fascinating. The chemistry, the story, the change in Jack Nicholson's character. Like, he is phenomenal in that movie. Helen Hunt is just as phenomenal, and Greg Kinnear. Every single person that is on screen in that movie is absolutely phenomenal. And I just absolutely love how that movie was like put together. And I just think it's like, because it is like a comedy, but like you get to the part when he's just like, you make me want to be a better man. And you're like, it's like, it does kind of like floor you. And I just remember being a kid and like responding to it, such an adult movie. But like, my favorite part of that is the whole, other people have good stories. Noodle salad, things like whatever he says in the car. And I'm like, I love that movie.
I love dog, like the part where he's playing the piano and he's like, over a dog, like
yeah, I think about that all the time when it creeps in behind him, the piano comes in and he's like crying, and I'm like, over a dog.
How people, animals, anyone, they get into your heart, and it just keeps expanding. And even for someone who doesn't want that feeling in their life, he can't deny that feeling of connection that he has, and empathy, which is something that I think he as a character doesn't think that he has, because you see him with the Greg Kinnear character in the beginning, and you're like, he doesn't understand him at all, and then you see how far he develops as a person, and the single mom and all of that.
And it's kind of one of those, I think it's also one of those movies that, like, aging with us, sort of, we look at it, in terms of the world and kindness and what we could do today, where it reminds me a little bit of that same sense, if you've ever seen Philadelphia, where, a big part of that movie, that's about the first kind of mainstream movie about AIDS, and Tom Hanks won an Oscar for it, and it's the same director as Silence of the Lambs, which is crazy because it does use a lot of the same filming techniques, which is wild, but I will forever think of the scene where Denzel Washington puts his hands on Tom Hanks's face, and it's like, he was so afraid to be in the room with him in the beginning, but then he just like is like, are you okay? Like at the end, and I think it's in that same vein of like, it was the first time I think I ever, it was 96, like probably was like, that character's gay, and starting to know within myself, being like, maybe I'm different, like, but like seeing where he was cared for, Simon, I think is the character's name in the movie, and I just, it like, God, I want to shut this off and watch it right now. It's one of those movies, and what's wild? I don't own it.
That's crazy.
Wait,
you're gonna get rid of. I am convinced they're gonna get rid of all physical media.
I know, that's why I have to buy. I keep trying to buy stuff. Like, if you like it, buy it, because it will be gone. But like, also, internet sucks. You can't rely on the internet for everything. But I think I might actually have gotten it on DVD. But it's one of those where I was like, I want like a really nice version of the movie.
No, when you want the if there's not a 4K, you want a Blu-ray. Like, you want the best quality.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. For your favorite movies, I always do.
Do I what?
Like, you upgrade for your favorite movies. Like, get the 4K.
I wasn't. I made a rule basically because I had so many DVDs when Blu-ray became a thing, and I didn't have a Blu-ray for a while. That I was like, I'm not gonna upgrade necessarily, but like like Moulin Rouge, I said I would if the set was better. So like when Moulin Rouge finally came out on Blu-ray, I didn't upgrade because I don't think the Blu-ray was good. The picture on the case is awful, and it doesn't have like any of the thing. But the nice, I have like this beautiful version of it that's like this 2-disc, opens up like everything. Oh, you're gonna pull it out right now?
I'm gonna pull it out.
I love. It's got like the green fair. The art on it is incredible. I bought that movie the day it came out on DVD, and I watched it over and over and over. Yeah. And I still like it. But that's one of those ones where if they do like a 4K one that's like good, but has at least all the special features, but is like a nice version of it, I'll get that because I kind of want to do the one for Hook that's in 4K because I heard that the 4K actually does have something on it it's like my new. But it's something is on that one that wasn't on the DVD. So I never got the Blu-ray, but it's like, so I'm like in that mode where I think I'm finally like ready, especially with the disappearance of physical media, that if there's like a version that is celebrating the movie, I want that thing.
And so some of the 4Ks of film, like older films, not digital, it doesn't make as much of a difference. It looks like a movie that was made last year. Like I know you don't love Quentin Tarantino, but I got Reservoir Dogs, and on 4K it looks like a brand new film. Like that's the kind of thing that
yeah, you know what I did that for when I got Blu-ray? Like that was a really important one for me. Is like, you know, you do all the research because at that time they were just like scanning movies, and some of them ended up really messed up. Was the Alien like quadrilogy came with like that restored version of Aliens that they were like the film stock that was used to film Aliens degraded really quickly, and it like no longer existed essentially like right after Aliens. And so it was one where they like literally had to go through and James Cameron had to be like, yes, I approve, you know, to like the lighting where it visually looks like a completely different film, and it's like a beautiful transfer of that movie. And that's one of those sets where I was like, that's a great set. So like someday that might be one where I'd maybe do the upgrade. I actually like Alien was one that came to me when, this is embarrassing, but growing up, it was Alien Resurrection, because it was like we had the Blockbuster in our town, and I would be like, whatever we had, I wanted to watch everything of it. So Alien Resurrection was the first one that I really like sat through and watched because I loved Winona Ryder too, and I was like, Winona Ryder's in this. And I mean, I love Sigourney Weaver because one of my favorite movies. For those of you who know how much I love Power Rangers, Ghostbusters was my Power Rangers before Power Rangers existed, and I loved Ghostbusters. Like that, I won that in a contest, that movie, because it had been on TV, and my mom sat down with me, and I remember doing the questions, and I answered the questions, and they called, and they were like, you can come to Max Movies, you've won the movie. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to own a movie. Like, my mom, they used to record movies like off of TV all the time. So like my Gremlins movie, which is, since we're on the subject of horror, Gremlins is easily one of my favorite movies. Like, that, like, I had an edited for TV version that I grew up watching that had commercials for like Dick Tracy in it. So I like, it's weird for me to see it when I watch it now on the DVD I have, that it's like, oh, I don't remember the Gremlin's head blowing up in the microwave. Like, oh, that's violent. But it's wild. It's also one of those movies where I'll be like, that's my favorite Christmas movie. I watch it at Christmas.
Yeah. I actually saw Gremlins 2 before I saw Gremlins 1, just because of, like, you know, when it came out on WPIX Channel 11 when I was a kid. And then I remember seeing that, and I loved Gremlins 2.
Gremlins 2 was on TV all the time, too. That one was on TV all the time. The first one was, like, never on TV.
Yep. Yeah, that's why we saw the second one. And then I actually didn't see Gremlins 1 until I was an adult, and I went back and watched it. And it's great. I love it. Well,
the insane thing about it is how different the tone of the films are. Well, like, the second one is a movie making fun of movie sequels, and like it's a comedy basically. And the first one is a little bit more of like, no, it's scary kind of, but also like I will never not think about the whole bar scene where they've got the gremlin with the dun, 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 who's doing the flash dance and everything, and then they've got the other one with the puppet. And like my goal in life, my other like I'm moving when I move to into like a bigger place and thing. The number one thing I want is a 1-to-1 replica of the gremlin who flashes people, and I want him to be at the front door. So when you come in, the first thing you see is the gremlin with his cape open. And yes, they do make it. It is out there. It exists. It is not even that expensive. It's like $200. It's a 1-to-1, and you can pose him. And I want it so bad.
And there's Artie running up, and then there's the gremlin.
Yep. Oh, it needs to be in like the perfect place. Like I don't know. But like I feel like if we're talking about like our favorite horror movies, like obviously I love Scream is one of my favorites in terms of like my favorite slasher, easy. But Scream is another one of those movies I think where it was like I think I just love movies because I love when people talk about movies in movies too. And that was like the first time I'd really seen that happen in a movie. And but I love The Frighteners. Have you ever seen The Frighteners?
Seen that, yeah. I haven't seen that for a while, but I remember because I saw that when I was a teenager, and I saw it a few times. Because when I was a teenager, I would watch the same movie like over and over and over again. Were you like that?
Oh yeah, and it depended on what it was. I know it's wild. Like it just was kind of movies that came around at the same time. Like The Cable Guy is one that I have seen probably a million times, and people were like, "That's not a good movie," and I was like, "I like it a lot." I don't know, like.
I saw it 6 times in the theater. 6.
In the theater? Oh my God. I love that. I'm sorry. I think that movie is wild, and I enjoy it. That, and my brother was obsessed with Broken Arrow. So I have seen the movie Broken Arrow with John Travolta and Christian Slater a million times.
See, I loved Face Off because they were both John Woo movies. But Face Off with John Travolta and then Nicolas Cage.
Is Broken Arrow a John Woo movie?
Yeah.
I feel like that it kind of explains a lot of the camera work in the end. That makes so much sense to me. Yeah. That movie messed me up. Like because my uncle is a state trooper and he lived with my grandparents when I was younger and like still, and he had a mag light, like a big mag light would be on the counter. And there's that scene in the movie where John Travolta takes the mag light and basically smashes the guy's throat with it. And I was always like, get that flashlight away from me. Get that flashlight away from me.
Yeah, those movies they were great. I watched that all the time. I loved Christian Slater when I was a teenager also. Because he was like...
Oh my God, he was... Yeah.
You know, so it was like, that's an age-appropriate Jack Nicholson type of humor, you know?
I watched Heathers for the first time during the quarantine, like during lockdown, and my God, that movie is wild.
Wow, that was the first time. Wow.
I have despite what people think, because I know I keep making it up, I legitimately have a list of like things I missed, like movies and stuff like that. And that was one where I was like, I'm gonna sit down today because I'm looking for like the '80s movies I missed, and I watched Heathers. I cannot believe when he has that gun in the school in the beginning and they're like, we're going to suspend you for I'm like, suspend you? He should be in jail.
Yeah, you should be done.
Oh my God. Lizzie in the chat just said, I used to watch Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves over and over and over again when she was like 5. That's actually a movie I have seen quite a bit too because my mom loved that movie. And she always says that the song from that movie, which is the everything I do. She's like, that's my song to you kids.
No, I love that movie.
We did watch
later.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it was the Christian Slater, and then we watched a lot of Kevin Costner movies because Wolf, what's the Wolf? Wolf Dances with Wolves was very big in our house. So
all of the moms loved him. Do you remember that? I remember being a kid, and like my mom was crazy about Kevin Costner, but like. All of the moms were. It wasn't just her.
My mom's like boyfriend, the one like she was like, this is the person I'm meant to be with. She always used to say Nicolas Cage, and I was like, now Nicolas Cage is like crazy, and I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. But she'd always be like, I love Susie Q. I love Susie Q, or whatever. I think that was the movie. Or Susie Q is the one with Amy Jo Johnson. It was another movie with the one where she goes back in time to her younger self, I think, or something, and he's the what?
Peggy Sue Got Married.
Peggy Sue Got Married. Susie Q is the one with Amy Jo Johnson, but yeah.
That was a different one, but that was another one of those movies that I was on PIX Channel 11 all of the time, and I would watch that almost every week.
I can't believe we just talked about Kevin Costner and I didn't even bring up Field of Dreams. That movie used to mess me up as a kid. Like, I would get emotional at the end because that scene where the stepdad, like the dad is arguing and they grab, and the girl from, I think she's the same girl in Hook, like falls off the thing and just like dead because she choked on the hot dog. And James Earl Jones has to come out and slap her on the back, and he's like, she'll be all right. I think it was James Earl Jones. No, James Earl Jones wasn't a ghost. It wasn't James Earl Jones. It was the other guy that they saw as an older guy who was young, and when he crossed the line, he became old. And it was like he gave up his chance to play baseball because he saved the daughter's life. And I'm always like, it was just one of those where I was like, there's so many emotions right now in this movie. But also, I love baseball movies. It's a weird thing. Bull Durham, that came up here, but I loved the Moneyball. I think I like baseball movies a lot.
Huh. I like boxing. That's my sport. I feel like any boxing movie, I'm all in.
Doc, that's who came out. That was his name. Yep.
Wait, what was it? Oh,
Doc was the name of the character who came out. It wasn't James Earl Jones. Yeah. But if you build it, they will come. That's a good movie. I love
that movie.
I don't own that movie. I need to buy that movie.
No, as you're saying it, I'm like, I don't feel like I've watched that movie since I was a teenager, but it was one of those movies I saw all of the time. So I must have seen it 15 times.
I think we used to record movies and then send them to my Nana in Florida, and so we'd watch whatever was at her house. So I very much remember always watching that at my Nana's house. So I kind of associate it with her a little bit, which is good. But okay, so another 80s movie that I got into a couple years ago that I had definitely seen parts of it when I was a kid, but not the whole thing, and not always the first one, is I'm obsessed with Poltergeist.
That is one of my husband Joe. That's one of his favorite movies is Poltergeist. I only saw it the first time with him when I was in my 30s.
I love it. I just think, because people were basically the debate is how much of it did Steven Spielberg direct, because it's not Steven Spielberg, it's Tom, the guy who directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Tobe Hooper. And but Spielberg wrote it, it was his idea. And it's this is kind of what E.T. was originally starting out as. And it's just one of those movies where it's I think it was the house at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios that really solidified it for me, where it was just I love that it's a horror movie, but it really, other than the one scene where the guy starts peeling his face off, and I know that's a lot to say, it's I thought it was going to be, it's like a family horror movie. It's not scary. There's a lot of really iconic moments in the movie.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The kind of movie where you could watch it as a family. It's not too much, but it was scary enough. I thought it was a really entertaining movie. I don't remember feeling scared when I saw it, but that's so interesting about Steven Spielberg. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. And I didn't realize is it Tobe Hooper?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize he directed that. That is nothing like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
Which
and that's kind of the wild. Sorry, I'm looking up Field of Dreams to my movie metal poster. No, I want the Blu-ray. Or if there's a nice 4K. There's a 4K that's 15. Or a multi-format Blu-ray that's 1166. So I'm assuming that comes with a digital copy.
I would get the 4K.
That's where I feel like I'm at right now, because the digital copies disappear eventually, anyways.
Yes, they're not. That's not even a decision when I see digital.
I have a separate wish list. I have a wish list on Amazon, but I have one that's just specifically for movies. So I sometimes sometimes add them to my other list, but it's really a list for me to be okay, what do I need to get now? What do I need to get now? But I do love. I like. This is one of those movies where it's I don't know. I just love. I don't know. It's that Spielberg thing again, you know? Did
you see The Fabelmans?
I loved it.
You did? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked it because it was like, it was long.
But did
and
you like?
Did I what? Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, where would you put that in terms of like ranking his films? Because I felt like I liked it a lot, and there were certain parts I loved. I think we talked about how we love the ending, um, but it wasn't as good as like an E.T. or Dawes or Jurassic Park or Schindler's List or
No, spoiler alert, I've never seen Schindler's List either.
Whoa.
I know. I will watch it. I've never seen Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, I don't. Those both seemed like too much for me. Like, but I will watch. I don't like war movies really, so it's like. But I will. Schindler's List, I'm definitely gonna watch. The version originally was when I was younger. I couldn't watch anything in black and white, so it was like I struggled with anything unless it was It's a Wonderful Life. I couldn't watch it. So, I know. So they're in my list of movies to be like you've got to watch them, but. No, I agree with you. I think I love it because it's crazy where it's like, it's such a pinnacle, like in his head and of what happened to him. And there's a lot of really poignant moments, but it's just one of those where it's like, wow, I can't believe like this is the metamorphosis of the person we get, like who went through all this stuff that's weird and real, but it's also like that weird family dynamic about relationships and divorce and sort of like holding on to things that aren't there anymore. And so I love it, but I do agree. I mean, it's not one of those like I remember finishing the movie and being like, I don't think everybody's going to like this one unless you are, one, a fan of movies and movie making, and two, a big fan of Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because I'm a fan of Steven Spielberg, but there are movies, I'm not a diehard like some people. Like, I liked Bridge of Spies. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was like the way some people said, like hyped it up to be. I feel like I like his classic movies more, like his older movies.
Yeah.
The newer ones are, I like West Side Story a lot, actually.
Oh, yeah. I thought West Side Story was like Steven Spielberg at his Steven Spielberg at his, like, in terms of like the direction of the movie and like the choreography of the camera and stuff like that. And like, I really feel like people forget about Minority Report a lot, and I think Minority Report's phenomenal.
I agree.
That's in my list of movies. That's in my like top list. It would be in my bucket, barrel, basket, whatever I had.
Yeah.
I think it's just, it's, yeah. I feel like it also started that new era of him with like kind of bleached looking film. And then it also was like, it was, I mean, that's the first movie I remember seeing Colin Farrell in. And it was like, I just remember it was so hypnotizing, and not really having seen like Tom Cruise in a movie like that. For me, like really, I felt like he's so good in that movie. Like, and it's not just about being like, oh, it's an action movie. Like, he's good. Like, and there's a lot of great, I don't know, Steven Spielberg really knows how to have the right person in the right part with the right, and they might not do really anything else ever again that's like that major, but you're just like, they're just always so perfect in that one thing. But Minority Report is off the chain. I feel like another one movie that if we switched over to action movies now, I would say that one of my favorite action sci-fi movies that has definitely become one of my favorite movies I watch all the time is The Edge of Tomorrow, which is what I will always call. It is not called Live, Die, Repeat, so I hate them for renaming it. Incredible movie.
No, agreed. That's one of those movies where sometimes I'll take a second and be like, oh, do I want to watch it again? Because it's the same thing over and over, and it's like Groundhog's Day. But no, it's always so exciting every time you put it on. And Emily Blunt, the jealousy I feel when she does those push-ups.
Oh my God.
I
think it's just, what I think about that movie is that I think it just flew under the radar. It's one of those types of movies where I feel like if it is on, if even part of it, if I even am looking at part of it, I'm kind of like, well, I guess I'm watching the rest of this now. Like,
yeah, it is so exciting, and the action scenes are really well done, and gritty and real, and like knowing that those actors were actually carrying around those suits, and just the strength they needed to just move around you can feel it in the movie. It feels real.
I also, again, like, not to, I mean, I I like Tom Cruise as an actor. And like I love Mission Impossible movies, and these last couple of Mission Impossible movies have literally been masterpiece in filmmaking. And I think it's another one of those where he's actually really good. Like, I wish he would do more movies like this. And like, it was, you know, I like Top Gun, and I like him as Ethan Hunt. But I like when he's sort of the guy that doesn't necessarily have to be like I want it to be more like these than like The Mummy. I mean, The Mummy sucks, but like I think a big problem of it is like he's got sort of that Dwayne Johnson thing, right? Like the whole like, I guess Dwayne Johnson, like Vin Diesel, they have things in their contracts where they can only get punched so many times in a scene or fall down so many times or like look like a non-hero sort of a person in a scene, which is wild to me. And Tom Cruise, you know, I mean, what's the movie with the cab where he's the bad guy?
Collateral.
Yeah, like is so good. And it's one of those, I think that, right, and I don't blame Tom Cruise at all for what he's doing right now. It's basically being like, well, you know, we can't all live forever. And like, he looks great and he's in peak shape. He's 60. So it's like, we are not like, and so like this last run of his movies have been very action centric, but like the guy's a solid actor beyond that. Like, I mean, he's an multi-time Academy Award nominated actor. I mean, if you've never seen Magnolia, Rain Man, I thought he's great in Rain Man 2, and like, you know, those are his younger, Jerry Maguire. But I thought his performance, because the guy's kind of spineless in the beginning of The Edge of Tomorrow, where it's like, and he kind of sucks. He keeps dying, and that's the part where it's like, I like that, but it feels this different. And what you said, Emily Blunt, God, what a statuesque, Mike. She is so good, and I feel like this was that big moment for her. Like, I mean, you know, and Devil Wears Prada, obviously, but this was a whole nother level.
Don't you feel like Looper was also a movie where people were like, oh.
Looper is another good... Looper, right here behind me.
Yeah, no, such a great movie. Yeah, Tom Cruise did a few of these kind of sci-fi movies at that time. The other was Oblivion, and that was another one that was really good and really underrated. Like, it didn't do that well, if I remember correctly, in the movie theater, but like, that was a good movie.
Oblivion, the same director who directed Tron Legacy and then also directed Top Gun Maverick.
I knew he did Top Gun Maverick. I didn't realize he did Legacy.
I think Tron Legacy is his first movie, because I'm pretty sure he did just like commercials or something, or music videos.
Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, that movie I thought was so much better than critics gave it credit for.
Oh, I thought, who's the girl in that movie? Is she somebody famous?
Olivia Wilde.
Oh, it is. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what's the carryover from Tron. That's why I was like, So you have a couple more on your list.
Yeah, and I feel like the others, like, I don't know, I feel like you'd be able to guess them just from like the years that we've been talking about.
La La Land, obviously.
Was La La Land. I mean, there's I teach it every year. I talk about it all the time. It's ridiculous, the amount of artwork and the amount of things that people give me that are La La Land related. Like, every year on my birthday, usually I get something from a student or someone who like draws me artwork from the movie, and it's the movie I can most freely talk about because it's PG-13, so I'm not, worrying about how it's going to look to other people if I say this is my favorite movie, but I never get bored of it. I always connect so much, and I connect so much to his character and that need to like actually make something and do something that you love. And I feel like that was one of the movies that kickstarted me into going from watching, maybe like somewhere between 200, 300 movies a year into getting into the 600s. Like, that was the movie that made me realize you need to watch everything before you die, because you're going to die one day.
Isn't there a book where it's like the 1,000 movies to watch before you die or something? Okay, you're working your way through it, yeah.
Yeah. I actually am. I like check off all the movies as I'm going through. I have the Sight and Sound list. I go through that. I go through the AFI list, the comedies for the AFI, everything, every list I can get my hands on.
I want to know what the other two movies are.
Oh, well, I feel like these are in no real order.
I was just gonna bring Requiem for a Dream up. Actually, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, this is even when I watch it, recently, it doesn't feel old. It is so. I just feel like it's moving all of the time. That Clint Mansell score is.
Oh, it's gorgeous, haunting.
Yeah, and yet it was still. I mean, basically, people think that's the score for Lord of the Rings when it's not. When it's actually made for this movie, and I think all four leads are incredible. I love the idea of addiction that's not just drugs, like the addiction of wanting to go back to a different life or wanting to have the family that you thought was a perfect family, but they were never really that perfect to begin with. I think Ellen Bernstein gives one of the best performances I've ever seen from
I'm gonna be on television.
Television, I know.
Harry's gonna be there. She's good.
And the one time I hate Jared Leto is in this movie.
Yeah, I know, right? That is what always comes back for me is that in this where I'm like, well, there's that. Also, like wild that like Damon Wayans is in this movie too. Like, not great. Damon Wayans, Marlon Wayans. Sorry, Marlon. I love Damon Wayans. Damon Wayans was my like if I had to pick one of the Wayans family members to follow. Like Damon was the one I grew up watching. Like anytime he was in a movie, we watched it. My like Blank Man. My dad loved, oh my God, the one where he's like a drill sergeant. Like he just showed it.
Oh my God, Captain Payne, was that it?
Yes, Payne. That Major Payne. Yeah, and he breaks the guy's finger. Like, my dad loves that movie, so we watched a lot of those. And I love Damon Wayans Jr. because he looks exactly like his father, but he's so funny. He's got that. He inherited that comedy. Yeah. But I was going to bring up Requiem for a Dream, actually, because I was going to say that, there are some movies where I feel like sometimes where it's like, I don't know that I classify them as my favorite movies, but they were so incredibly impactful in terms of like, I don't want to be like, in how I create or whatever, but Requiem for a Dream was one that like, for me, was similar to how I felt like you had people that watched the rumor, the first train, the video, the first movie ever shown that was the train on the tracks and people thought it was going to come through the screen. That's the kind of impact I feel like watching Requiem for a Dream had on me in terms of editing, where I was like fascinated. Like the hard cuts with the like, and then the eye expanding and the sound, because it was a combination of not just the images but the sound and the score, and it was all musical sort of in that way, where it was all like notes but beats of everything, and it's fascinating. And it's one of those movies where I'll be like, I hate what it's about and I do not feel great when I watch it, but the way it's filmed, that camera that pans through the apartment as she's cleaning, and it just takes like, it's just her sped up in that fast-paced motion, and every kind of part of that movie offers something, and it's very depressing, but it is like, it also just increases in this pace, this frenetic pace that's kind of wild too, and it is fascinating film where I'm like, I like to edit in that sort of style, and I think it developed from that movie,
Yeah, and I love that he created Aronofsky, the camera that's latched on to the actors, and so it gives such a.
He created that.
Yeah, he made that for that movie. So where you see the actors are actually carrying the camera and they have that rig. That was from this movie, and I just feel like you nailed it when you said the musicality, because that's what it feels like. It feels like a requiem, like that kind of music, or that idea of like having a dream, because all of the characters they have such good hearts and they come from such a good place, but then all of these mistakes just lead down the worst path imaginable, and it is really dark and really bad at the end. And I know a lot of people who have a hard time watching the last section of that movie, I just am so enthralled by the filmmaking of it, like
Oh
how
yeah.
it was constructed, that I don't feel that kind of off-putting feel that I think a lot of people have. I remember showing that to my friends, especially like in college, and they were like, "Well, that was good, but I will never watch that again for the rest of my life." And I'm like, "Oh, I will watch it again and again for the rest of my life."
I watched it, and it was one of those movies where it was over, and I bought it. I was like, I got to go to the store and
Yeah.
go buy this movie because I remember the first person who told me about it, first person told me to watch it, and the next day I handed them their copy back and then bought another one in that same moment because I worked at Borders, and I was like, I know that I will watch this again because of I want to watch and see how it's edited, and I want to watch and see how it was made and filmed and how like fascinating it is. And I didn't know he created that sort of that style of that camera on him that did that either, because I forget about that because I always think about the editing, and stuff like that. It's Darren Aronofsky is a wild person. So
Wild. I didn't care for the whale so much.
I still
But
haven't seen
he
it.
you have to watch it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just want to know what you think about it. But Black Swan, I think, is what would probably be in a top 50, top 100 list for me. I love Black Swan. I love The Wrestler. I liked Mother a lot, even though nobody liked that movie. I even like that. The Whale was a step too far in terms of very obvious symbolism for me.
What's another movie that I remember watching and then immediately going to buy was Memento.
Um, that was on my top 20 where I wasn't sure where to put it. That's my favorite Chris Nolan movie is Memento.
I think like I had seen a preview or something about it on like the MTV Movie Awards or something like, so like it was still like it had come out and like gone out, so it was before he had done anything else really. And I was like, oh, I like that. I love Carrie Ann Moss from The Matrix, and I recognized. I think Guy Pearce had just been in The Time Machine maybe, and I had watched that, and I was like, oh, I like that guy too. And so I was like, okay, I'll watch this movie. And I remember like I rented it. I took the movie out, drove it back to Blockbuster, then immediately drove to our Walmart and bought the DVD, and then had to immediately go back to the Walmart because it was shrink wrapped and everything. Got home, there were no DVDs in it. But it wasn't stolen. It was like a manufacturing error because it was still shrink wrapped and sealed and everything. And so I had to go back and be like, I'm not trying to steal this and then somebody stole a TV while I was trying to exchange it right behind me. So it was like they picked up a TV and walked out the front, and I was like,
Massachusetts, or were you in
in
Florida?
Plymouth? No, it was in Massachusetts. Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
But yeah, I remember being like, I'll watch whatever this guy does. And then I had that same feeling when Batman Begins came out. I was like, holy cow. I was like, this is wild. And then Inception is an incredible film. The Dark Knight is like an incredible movie. I like Interstellar, and I feel like Interstellar is a score I will literally, whenever I'm traveling, like I put it on. Mm-hmm. Everybody likes to make TikToks with that one part of the song now, and I'm like, you got stupid zillennials don't even know what you're doing. Just kidding.
No, I know. I think his entire film, I don't know if there's a movie Chris Nolan ever made that I disliked. Even his first movie, Following.
I watched them all. I've seen them all, yeah. And I'm like, except for I need to rewatch Insomnia because that is the only one where I was like, I remember watching and being like, I don't think I like this movie. But I have to go back because I don't think it's also like, it feels like one of those movies where I think he just directed it, but there's no infliction of his style in it at all.
It's the least Chris Nolan-y movie because it's basically a remake of an international film. I forget if it was like German or Swedish, but it was something like that. And then they remade it, and so it was basically Warner Brothers just testing him out to see if he could actually direct. And then they realized, oh, he could, and then it went into like The Prestige and all of
Oh my God, The Prestige. Talk about an underrated film. The Prestige is definitely one of my favorites of his because that was also before Hugh Jackman had really been in a lot of things either. Like I think it was one of those moments where it was like, it's good that he was in that movie because that led to like, also Hugh Jackman was in a Darren Aronofsky film, was in The Fountain. And And it was one of those where I was like, the Prestige is one where I was like, this is going to put him like on the map with Wolverine again. Like, it's like crazy good. And I saw the Prestige, and I think like the next week or the next month or something, Casino Royale came out. And so it was like, it was a summer of movies. So I was like, oh my God, what are we in store for? And, he had just done Batman Begins, and I was like, remake all the movies. And now here we are.
I know. No, he is beyond incredible. And I think we've talked about, I'm so happy that Cillian Murphy is getting his like shot to actually be a star and be the center of a movie, and maybe an Academy Award nomination, maybe.
Oh, I can't wait for Oppenheimer. I can't wait.
Yep, can't. Three solid hours. I'm ready.
Also, I thought it was going to be in black and white, and that new trailer that came out was like, no, it's not. Only part of it is, or something.
Yeah, it's just a few parts. Yeah, I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, that trailer is so intense. The thing, I'm like, God. Okay, were those all your movies you had in your stack?
Just one more. Was the Blade Runner 2049 is my...
Okay, so I love Blade Runner 2049 when I saw it in the theater so much, and I bought the nice version when it came out and everything. I haven't watched it again because I refuse to let my brain even be remotely distracted, but it's also one of those movies where I do not want to watch a subpar sound. Like, I want to be able to, like, I think I'm going to watch it with, like, noise-canceling headphones plugged in or something like that, because I'm like, I want that full kind of, that score is incredible.
You saw that in the movie theater, right?
Oh, yes, yeah. One of the few movies where I actually spoke up and yelled at somebody next to me, because this couple came in an hour late into the movie, talked while they were there, took out a flashlight, looking for glasses, things, then opens all this like tinfoil and metal, like dinner and stuff, and finally I was like, shh, and then they were like, don't shush me, and I said, you were an hour late to this film, and you are now have come in here with a flashlight, talking, making so much noise, and everyone in this theater has already been here for an hour, and they left.
Good. Oh my God, good.
So, because they definitely were like, they were definitely movie hopping, so I'm like, whatever. Because I think, but I mean, Blade Runner, that movie moved me too at the end. Like, it was crazy.
Oh my God, not to give it away, but like, the images and the way water and the different forms of water are used in the movie, and the color symbolism, and just like the constant contrasting colors with the blue and the orange, and it's gorgeous.
there is someone in this chat here. Nicholas says, my aunt was the woman on the cover of the original Blade Runner, Sean Young. Wild.
Wait. Saying that his aunt was Sean Young? Or is Sean Young?
Is Sean Young, yeah.
That's insane.
Wow, that's crazy. That's wild. But wait, Trey is saying Lois Einhorn Finkel is your aunt. Is Lois from Ace Ventura? Is that the same woman from Blade Runner? And he says yes, and she's crazy. I am like, what?
Do you remember when she did the Catwoman thing? Sean Young, when she wanted to be Catwoman and came on some talk show dressed up as Catwoman?
No, I don't know Sean Young that well. Oh, well, I didn't even know Sean Young was... Talk about a movie I've seen a million times as Ace Ventura, because my father, again, same movies he watched over and over, Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura 2, Major Payne. He liked a lot of these, like, real raunchy comedies.
Yeah.
Would not let me watch Mrs. Doubtfire because he said, I don't like that movie. It makes me sad because I think your mother's going to try and take you away from me at some point. I was like, too real, Dad. Too real. I brought it over here, rented from the Carver Public Library, thinking I was bringing us a funny movie to watch. That's wild. Okay, but Blade Runner, yeah, I also, as somebody who, like, I'm going to admit it right now, I don't like the first Blade Runner movie. I try. I have it. I watch it every couple years. I'm like, maybe now it'll finally take, years later. And it never, like, I'm always like, I get it too. Like, I understand what it's about. I understand the stuff. And like, but it's one of those movies where I was like, I hate this. Like, I get the art and everything in it, like the set design and sort of the aesthetic of the future and how that's crazy and everything. I like it. It's just so, I thought maybe it was the film noir aspect maybe I didn't like, but that's not true because I thought the Batman was like film noir and was beautiful, like was great. And so I'm like, I don't know what it is. I just do not connect to the original Blade Runner. But Blade Runner 2049, I 100% would be like, that is a movie that not enough people watched at all.
A million percent. And that is something where the people who love that movie are diehard fans of that movie. Like, I definitely have a group of people in my life where this movie just affected them quite like a lot. But not that many people saw it. And I have a lot, and it is slow. It's slower. The people, when I saw it in the movie theater the second time, they were talking the whole time. The girl, it was a date that they went on, and the girl couldn't stop talking, and she thought it was so boring. And then they left the moment Harrison Ford entered the movie. I'm like, why would you leave at this point? This is like
seriously, the turning point of the movie, like.
Yeah. So, and it's like you made it this far. You made it like an hour and 45 minutes in, and you're giving up now. But
Jared Leto again too. Creepy part in that movie.
Oh my god!
I hate that part.
So Jared Leto is in 2 of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, unfortunately. But I don't hate him. I just think he's not as good as he thinks he is of an actor. But
Morbius is one of your favorite movies, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that was actually number 11 on my list.
I actually didn't see Morbius.
I did. It's not that good.
Oh, good. Yeah.
It's a movie.
I feel like I'd be remiss not saying, like, I oftentimes will cite Moulin Rouge as one of my favorite movies, and that is one where I remember sitting in the theater, and I think that's the first movie I'd seen where, like, sitting in the theater, I was realizing the effect of the effect that the filmmaking was having on me. I remember my friends swimming in my friend's house. I was swimming there. Her parents had come in, and they were like, "We just saw it." I'm like, "Oh God, I can't wait to see it." And I was like, "How was it?" And they were like, "It was excellent." They were like, "The beginning was a little slow." And I remember going to see the movie and being like, in what world was the beginning of that acid trip of a movie? How was that slow? That was literally just like, but I remember like watching that and just being like, how did the editing, what they would have had it done, and being like, it made me feel, I remember it making me feel like my heart was beating faster because it was like, oh, feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm in this exciting thing. It's like pulling you in and like, and I thought, oh, well, maybe it's Baz Luhrmann, and it's not because I don't like Strictly Ballroom, and Romeo and Juliet is, I've seen it, but it, and obviously Australia is not great, and I thought Elvis was good, but Moulin Rouge is just, Ewan McGregor, I was like, it was phenomenal, and like when he cries at the end of that movie too, like, but Nicole Kidman's so good. I mean, I forget his name right now, but the one who played the like head of the Moulin Rouge, Harry Zidler, but I can't remember his name. Jim Broadbent. Yeah, and like that scene is the scene where they have just done Tango Roxanne is like one of the best assembled. Like that was another movie where I was like, the editing in this movie is phenomenal, and they showed that scene for the editing when it was up for the Oscar, which I think it won the Oscar for editing, and I think it won the Oscar for like production design. But I remember like that scene where she goes and he's like, "You're dying," and he tells her the whole thing, and the way the like lighting in that scene where it like goes to black, but then it's her, but then he's like right here and he's going down the thing with it, and it's just weird, the part where she's just like 2 days and it's not a song, and she's just like, "We're dreaming," and he's doing the like dreaming, and it's like, and she does that, the show must go on, and then it's just like a song which I had never heard either. So I'm like, I know it's a jukebox musical, but I also was like, a lot of those songs I didn't really know. I mean, obviously I knew some of them, but like, it was just like wild to me, like the emotional beats in this movie. But then like you get to the end and the whole thing at the end, and I was like, it just like the small sets with the larger sets and like how they filmed it is just like, It's mind-boggling, and it is just, it's one of those movies where I'm just like, I have friends who absolutely hate it because I think they hate jukebox musicals, and they're very snobby, snobby musical people, and I hope they're watching this right now because they were earlier, and I'll say it to their face, they also hate The Greatest Showman, which I get it. I acknowledge Greatest Showman is not, like, in terms of a movie, if you're like, is it a good movie? I'd be like, I don't know, but it is certainly an entertaining film because I think everybody in that movie, like Michelle Williams, Hugh Jackman, obviously, like they are all, Zac Efron, Zendaya, like we are all getting such a electric performance, and like the music is so catchy, and the scenes where they're doing all those performances are so well done that I'm like, it's a conundrum where I'm like, I don't think it's necessarily a well-made movie, but it's like, it's one of the most enjoyable movies to sit there and watch. It makes me emotional too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's probably, I feel like when I'm watching Singing in the Rain, where it's like, no, it's a really great movie, but it's just the way it makes me feel. And I think when I saw Greatest Showman, I walked in thinking I'm going to hate this because I actually don't love musicals necessarily. Like
I don't either.
Yeah, but yet the ones that I love, like a Moulin Rouge, a La La Land, Singing in the Rain, like I love those movies. But like the really traditional ones, like I don't like Mamma Mia. I saw Rent on Broadway, but I didn't like the film version of it, and I met
Rosario Dawson yesterday.
You did?
Yeah, like last night. I didn't bring up Rent though. I brought up Josie and the Pussycats to her.
Oh, fun.
Because I said, Josie and the Pussycats is criminally... I said, I'm a huge fan of your work. I said, I just wanted to tell you that I think that Josie and the Pussycats is criminally underrated. And she was like, I think it holds up, too. And I wanted to be like, I've got the vinyl at my house. Come over.
You could be best friends.
But I like a song and dance musical is what I've realized. Like, I like... I thought The Producers was fun because that was like funny and fun, but like I don't. It's hard for me to like get into a like modern musicals sometimes. Like I don't like I don't like Les Mis. I don't like Phantom of the Opera. Like I like the song Phantom of the Opera, but that's the only song in that whole thing I like. And I like On My Own from Les Mis because it was like I was in chorus and literally it was the song that everyone sang to audition for any musical ever. On My Own. I think that's Les Mis. That might not be Les Mis. That might be something else. But
see, that's the point. Is they all sound like musicals.
Oh, I like the Book of Mormon. Somebody brought that up. That was good. But that was like, for me, it's like, okay, Bye Bye Birdie. I love Bye Bye Birdie. I hate the movie, but I love the musical. The movie's awful. Sorry, Dick Van Dyke, the movie's terrible. But Dick Van Dyke agrees that the movie was bad because they made it all about the girl. I forget who plays. I think it's Anne Margaret is the girl. And they made it all about her and took the story really basically about it being about, like, Cheetah Rivera was in the Broadway version, and I wish she was in the musical. But whatever. No one's made a good version of that yet. But I don't like operatic music because I can't understand what they're saying.
I don't like dramas necessarily that are musicals because I feel like it doesn't fit. Like I understand if you're really like happy and then that comes out in this sort of abstract way and singing and dancing, but then when it's really serious and you're singing about your suffering, I don't feel like I want to sing about that. Like I would rather just a straight up drama at that point.
Somebody brought up Wicked. I do love Wicked, but Wicked again, I think is more in a traditional sort of song and dancing musical. But that second act of Wicked's going to need some work before it's an actual movie, though. It works as a play, but it doesn't work as. I don't think it will translate. The first act of Wicked will translate perfectly into a movie. The second act is great as the musical, but I think it needs filler to work as continuing the parts of the movie. But we'll see how it comes out. I'm excited for that. So what would you
say your favorite movie is? Do you have, like, when people say that to you, do you have, like, that one?
I think I would say, like, Moulin Rouge because I feel like it encapsulates a lot of the things about movies that I love. Like, a lot of the filmmaking story, color. Like, I love, like, I think a lot of the things like especially in like Tango Roxanne, there's a lot where like Satine is lit very blue and cold and obviously because Ewan McGregor's series is red, but she's like looking up above down at him, so he's kind of in hell and she's in, and it's this whole like the lighting, the color scheme, all that stuff. It's the same reason why I like Spider-Man 1. I like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, but I also, everyone talks about Spider-Man 2, which I think is a great film. Spider-Man 1, I think, deserves just as much credit because it's just as good, I think, if not completely palatably different, because Spider-Man 1 has so many of these like dark greens that contrast the like deep blue and red of his suit, and I love the mesh of the camp and the horror and the score that Danny Elfman did. And then again, the editing of that movie, and I think it's very well, like, I think the acting works so well for the movie at hand. And like, I just think it's one of those movies, again, that came out in like 2002. And I was like, there are a lot of really fast, like, I love the shot when the Green Goblin drops Mary Jane and the kids in the vehicle at the same time. And it shows both of them falling in his eyes, like obviously like differently. And people are like, that's not the right angle. And I'm like, it's a metaphor, you idiot. A visual metaphor. But like, and then I love the shot where like the pumpkin bomb blows up and like, it's just that slow motion where it's like peeling off his face. And then it gets into looking like, what's the Cabin in the Woods movie?
Wait, that's the movie.
Evil Dead. It looks like Evil Dead. No. I sorry. I know I said Cabin in the Woods, and I was like, not Cabin in the Woods, the other Cabin in the Woods movie. Like, but like there's a lot that's like that movie. Spider-Man succeeds because it was a horror movie. So that's what I love. I think, I don't know, I just don't think it gets sometimes doesn't get the credit it deserves because everyone's like, Tom Maguire makes stupid faces, and I was like, in 2002 we loved it and we loved him in it. Like, shut up. No, he is my Spider-Man.
I loved him as Spider-Man, and now, I mean, maybe not as much anymore, but at the time, I loved him.
No, well, yeah, not as a person, but because I love Pleasantville. Pleasantville, I think, is a phenomenal movie.
That movie.
That one gets me emotional, and I think that one would hold up really well too if we like watched it again, like recently right now.
Really long time, but I remember when it came out, I saw it a bunch of times, and it was it was like one of the first movies where I saw something that was doing something artistic with what the deeper purpose and the metaphor and the black and white to color, and I thought it was so clever, and I wonder if I would like it still today because I was so young when I watched it, but it was a movie that showed me the possibility of what a film could be and how you could look at it more artistically and not just the storyline, but look at it visually and listen to like the sound effects and how that adds to what it is that you're seeing.
I think the mom story in that and then the Jeff Daniels character in that too is like one of the more powerful parts. But I also love that movie's kind of about like the nerdy brother who was like obsessed with the show and the sister made fun of him, but the show ultimately both made them like better people. Because it was kind of about how we can ingest art and what art does to us when it impacts us and how we move that forward. And what I feel like there's a strong message in terms of that too. Plus, I love the Fiona Apple Across the Universe cover.
Now, Fiona Apple is one of my top favorite singers of all time. So
I'll put on Extraordinary Machine or that album. You know the album I'm talking about that has the like crazy weird I like that album. You and Kim, this is why you and Kim are good friends, because she also loves Fiona Apple. Loves Fiona Apple.
I love her.
I need to say that Back to the Future is also one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't bring that up yet, because I know that's one of your favorites.
I feel like sometimes it's like there are movies and you're like, oh yeah, of course it is. But like, Back to the Future, so like I took I took multiple film writing classes, but I took a film genre class, which was really like one of my favorite classes I took in film school. And the genre was sci-fi. Mm-hmm. But my professor, who I believe his name was Andrew Gay, he'd like written stuff, and he also like traveled the world to lecture about screenwriting. And so he was like not there the first couple of weeks. And then when he showed up, I was just like, he was so fascinating. But we watched movies like Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, We watched not The Matrix, but that other movie that had come out at the same time that everybody forgets is that Existent. Yeah.
That is one of my favorites.
I don't like it as much as The Matrix.
Well, I mean,
but it does have it's wild at the end. It does have that twist where you're like, oh, like,
But the Matrix is probably my top 20 favorite movies. That would be like on the next list. But no, Existence I thought was such an underrated movie, and it felt real. Like that's a direction that our world could actually go in, and it's a young Jude Law. So like,
oh, very young, yeah.
There's that.
No, but that was so I loved like looking at movies like that. I think I feel like we watched one of the Alien movies. I think we watched Alien. Like I think we watched the first Alien. But he talked about we also had like a project. Was it that class or was it the same teacher? Like we used His Girl Friday. We essentially had to create like a Wikipedia page about it and break down different sections of the movie and the script and like what it meant and stuff. But so I don't think it would have been in that class because like why would we have been doing His Girl Friday in the sci-fi class? So I think it was a different class I took with him. But in one of those two classes I took, we talked about Back to the Future, and they were like, because the question was, what do you think are some of the most perfect screenplays ever written? And he was like, without a hint of irony or anything, he said, the teacher said, Back to the Future is one of the best screenplays that has ever been written. And because he was like, beginning to end, like it says so many things, but it circles its story so well. And it sets everything up so well, and the way it moves forward and backwards, and then everything. As he like talked about it forever, and I was just like, I knew I had loved Back to the Future, but the way like listening to him talk about it, I was just like, so it's like not just a movie that we all love. We love it because it is genuinely a great movie. Like it is a good movie, but it's also wild because you're just like, I just love Michael J. Fox so much, like, and the energy of that movie. So it's like the writing, it's the energy, it's the. So many things in that movie are so good. I love the whole trilogy though, so like I love it. Like I have a little Back to the Future area right here with like the hoverboard. There's pop vinyls. There's a special sets. That's one of the movie sets I have multiple versions of.
I feel like that's a movie where you're right. Like people are almost made to feel guilty if you say that's your favorite movie, because in a way it's almost such an obvious thing.
Yeah.
To pick, people love it, but like it really is a great film. And I personally I do, the first one is definitely my favorite of the three, but I like the entire trilogy. But the first one, that was the one that played on TV all of the time, so I think I have that nostalgia of being a kid and seeing that movie on TV constantly.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt about the second one growing up. I was always like, this one's my favorite because I love the depiction of the future, but I also loved how he went back into the first movie, and I was fascinated where I was like, how did they do it? Like, not understanding, how cameras work and doubles and things like that. And like, obviously sometimes you're like, oh, that's, green screen, whatever. But like, it was, I just remember it being like crazy. I do agree with you about The Matrix though, too, is that like, whether it's just one of those movies that every time I watch it. So I went to go see it in the Dolby Theater when they released it like a year or two ago for the 20th anniversary, and our 20th, 25th, 20th. I don't know, but I was like so happy I did because I only had ever seen the second and third one in the theater. I had never seen the first one, and it was crazy to sit there in that sound and like really get that movie, because I honestly I like the second Matrix a lot too, and I don't really like the third. I saw the fourth one in the theater and I think I hated it, but I also bought it because I was like, well, I want to rewatch it because I feel like I was in a weird mindset, and like I get the commentary, but it also feels a little like I don't know. I got to give it another shot, but the second one I find I watch more than any of them, but I think it's just because I like I like a lot of the like mythology that's on the plate in the second one, where it's a lot about. That's why I think I like Blade Runner 2049, because I like this examination of what it means to be a human. Like, what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to be? What does that ultimately mean to be human? And what makes us what we are, and that sort of thing. So like, I liked like. I know it's people hate it. Like, I am not saying I liked it as like it's in my favorite list or anything, but like I remember people complaining about Batman versus Superman a lot and being like it was really slow. But I was like, for me, I was like, well, I liked a lot of the stuff where it was like I've never seen Superman have to really deal with this sort of emotional weight. I think that's why I like Smallville so much, is that it was like, it really dealt with like, well, he's the only one of his kind, and he is, as much as he wants to be like everybody else, he isn't, and he's constantly reminded of it. And I liked how Smallville was kind of the Monster of the Week sort of metaphor thing too, and all that stuff. But I have to mention another movie before we stop. Yeah. Because I feel like it's a movie I talked about before, but it was one of those where I was like, every time I watch it, I don't watch it like super frequently, because it is probably the movie I have cried in the most. Like, I feel like it just gets me. So was Life is a House.
Wow, I've never heard you talk about that movie before.
I don't even remember how I ended up seeing. You know why I saw that movie? Scott Bakula was in it. And I was like, I love Scott Bakula, but he's in a very small part in the movie. But it's the movie why Hayden Christensen became anything. And if you're like, I don't like Hayden Christensen, I would watch this movie, because this movie, like, however you don't like him in Star Wars, if you think he's like too whiny and bratty, like, this is the movie where I think George Lucas watched this movie and was like, that's how I want this kid to be. But it's like, it's Kevin Kline, and I think like Robin Wright is the other person, is the woman in it. But I could be wrong. But Hayden Christensen, like, I think there's a bunch of people in it. Who's the girl who was in the second Hunger Games movie, who was the one who would take her clothes off?
Oh, Jenna Malone.
Jenna Malone is in it. And Ian Somerhalder's in it, and like everybody, so many people are in it. But it is like one of those movies where it's a story where basically, I mean, I don't want to ruin anything, but it is about being confronted, like, kind of with the end of your life, and being like, what was my life? How did that impact how I was with other people? And in the end, like, what's the legacy you want to leave? And and what that impact will have on other people. And it's one of those movies that you'll get to the end and be like, I want to do something to make someone else's life better. Like, it's a positive feeling you have at the end, and it is just one of those, like, I cry so much, and it's like, but it is so good. It's so good. It's a nice movie. Like, when I say I cry a lot, I don't want it to be like, oh, it's so depressing and dramatic or whatever, and it's a little dramatic, but it's like, it's ultimately like, it's such a easy movie to watch. I don't know, like, but it'll emotionally affect you, and the best way that I feel like movies can affect you down to your, like, core.
I own that movie, and
okay.
No, I own the DVD of that, and I just haven't seen it since I was probably like early 20s. So it's been like 20 years since I've seen that movie. And I loved it when I saw it. And I was always a really big fan of Kevin Kline. So I think that's why.
Oh, he's so good in that movie. That's it. Yeah.
And I saw A Fish Called Wanda for the first time, and that's what he won the Academy Award for. And he's so funny. Do
you know who his wife is?
Phoebe Cates, right?
I just learned this, yeah. Because I was like, no. And that's like, when they got married, she stopped acting. She was just like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm like, oh my God, because I love, I used to watch Gremlins and Drop Dead Fred and all that,
Yep. Yeah, it's a weird couple on first glance. Like, he's pretty substantially older than her, right?
Yes, I think he's like 20 years older or something like that.
Yeah, they've been together the entire time, so.
Since I think it was like the late 80s or so. It was like right around I looked it up, and I was like, and they have kids and everything. I'm like, wow.
They were in a movie together, and that's how they met. I can't remember which movie it was.
Constance is saying, Ryno, you make the world a better place. That is very kind of you. But I also feel like I should say, I think I would put V for Vendetta in one of my favorite movies. Like, so I think being able to verbalize the idea of representation is only like a newer thing to me. And I think I have always thought it was important, but not being able, like, growing up in sort of I had Will and Grace. I feel like came to me at just the right time in life because I watched it as like I remember being in 8th grade watching it, and then like kind of being like, I want everyone to watch this show because it's so funny. But then like not knowing, but knowing sort of a thing. Like not being like, oh, I'm gay, like, but like also not realizing like there wasn't a lot of stuff, because then in high school for me it was like Queer as Folk, which I used to have to like buy. I would have my friend go and buy it for me, and she would like give it to me in the parking lot, and it was like, that was back when like TV on DVD was like $80, like, but that was another show that like was like cinematic looking, like, and I remember being like, oh, I love how they film and edit this show and everything. But I remember being like, it was the only like sort of a thing with like, I see it with like gay storylines. And I remember the scene in V for Vendetta where, where Natalie Portman's in the prison and she's getting the notes through the wall, and it's the story about the two lovers, the lesbians in there, and kind of about what happened when this government took over, and how like there were no more Scarlet Castles, and like it is one of those where like how people talk about Up, the beginning of Up being like its own separate devastating movie. That is what is in V for Vendetta, is this other separate devastating movie that is like so beautifully done. Do you know that the Wachowskis were the DPs for that movie? Because the person who directed it was the DPs for The Matrix.
Wow, I did not know that.
They alternate back and forth.
1,000,000% see it in the way that film is shot and the way it's put together. Yeah, they're another those systems created something between that and Sense8. Did you ever watch that show?
No, but I've heard that's like, I gotta watch that. But they did Cloud Atlas, which I very much also. It was them and then a third director. And I honestly, I know not everybody's seen it. It's not for everybody, but I loved that movie.
No, I really like Cloud Atlas a lot more than I thought I would, because I probably shouldn't say, but Tom Hanks is not. So I would not see a movie because Tom Hanks is in it. I'll just say it like that.
Okay.
I
No, you know what's weird is like I had this thing where I was like, lasagna was one of my favorite foods, and then one day you have one too many slices of lasagna, and you're like, the thought of lasagna makes me sick. That was Tom Hanks for a big chunk of my life, and I forget what the movie was that turned me around, and I was just like, God, I love Tom Hanks. What was wrong with me? I love lasagna. I should have been eating more of it. And so I have that. I had a weird section of my life where I was like, oh, this guy again? Like, but then now I'm like, I love him. Now, oh my God.
Did you see the new Wes Anderson trailer? He's in it.
I cannot wait. The look of that movie where it looks like those old postcards, and like the fact that it's about like the whole, like with the aliens and like Arizona, or is it Arizona where it's supposed to be or something? Or it's like a fictional city, right? But
yeah. It's called it's City, is that the
Asteroid City, yeah. And I'm looking forward to that very much, but
me too. That's actually on my first day off for summer vacation, is the day that movie comes out. So I'm pumped.
Yeah. There's some good movies, I mean, that are on the way, but yeah, V for Vendetta, gang, give it a watch again, because you know what? I still think it's the one movie where I'm like, Natalie Portman's good in this.
No, and Black Swan.
Black Swan. I will give her Black Swan too. I will give Black Swan as well.
And you love Annihilation.
No, God, I don't even get how a single person who watches that likes it, which is crazy because I would put Ex Machina on one of like such a phenomenal movie.
Oh my God, you would. I feel like you would hate Men, which is the third movie Alex Garland did.
Oh yeah, I remember the preview for it, and it's I don't know. I wanted to watch that Alex Garland show where it was like Nick Offerman was on it, and he had like long hair. I forgot what it was. It was on FX, so I'd want to see it. But someone says, "Have you heard about Beau is Afraid?" And yeah, I do want to see that. But who directed Beau is Afraid? Midsommar director.
Ari Aster.
Yeah, which I hated Midsommar. I think it's one of the worst things I've ever had to sit through in my entire life. And everybody else is like, I loved it.
No, I'm really excited for that movie too. I think that's another one that's like a solid 3 hours. So more movies that are just like 3 hours after 3 hours. Did you see Avatar yet?
I'm sorry. So John in the chat is saying he's never had lasagna in his entire life, and I am like floored right now. And yes, I did. I saw Avatar right before the Academy Awards, and
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
it was like when people say they like it, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you not to, but it's definitely like an hour and a half too long. It's not telling a story that needed to be as long as it was. It's also wild to me that the story is a lot smaller than the first movie, but it took like 17 years to make. And I just feel like I was like, it gets to the part where the kid's befriending the whale that talks. And I was like, wait, the fish talk? Like literally talk? Like they had subtitles. Wait, did you not see it?
No, I haven't seen it. You literally you spoil that from start to finish for me, and I could care less.
You'll forget. You'll get to it and be like, because it just happens out of nowhere. It just starts talking, and there's a subtitle, and you're like, wait, what? And like, so I don't know. It didn't. It's fine. It's whatever. I thought I was fine with the first one. It was fine, but yeah, I don't know. I'm
No,
like,
I was fine with the first one also, but I felt no need for a sequel at all.
I think ultimately in the end, I have other movies where like I love J.J. Abrams' style, and I'm always embarrassed to be like, I think The Force Awakens might be my favorite Star Wars movie. I just hate that the other movies don't deliver on what was started in that movie, so it feels very like, oh, I'll never get the end of that actual story. But I want to say like Star Trek 2009 is like one of my like, it's like crawled up my list of being like, because like I watched every little special feature about this movie, and the way they like film so much stuff practically that you don't even know is practical looking at it is wild. And like I just love his visual style is like the perfect type of a popcorn movie for me. Like I loved Super 8.
Super.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Which I don't think enough people saw, because I want to be like, if even remotely enjoyed Stranger Things, you will like Super 8. Is essentially that same plot, but before it, and same ideas in the 80s too, and everything. And like, I just thought that's another one of those where I was like, God, the emotional punch in this movie is so good.
no, I love that. Did I ever tell you that I was this close to being friends with Chris Pine?
What?
Yeah, so when I studied abroad in England, in Leeds, like of all places, Leeds, like not a very popular city, we both studied abroad in the same school, both with an English major. He's just 1 year older than me. And
Oh
so
my
I
God.
literally missed him by 1 year. And I can guarantee we would have been in classes together because I took only English classes when I was in England.
Okay, I don't think you've seen it yet because it just came out, but Dungeons and Dragons is fantastic.
So I talked to you, I talked to Ken about it, and I talked to one of my friends from work who's an art teacher also, and he loved it. Loved it.
I was sitting in the movie theater halfway through it, and I was like, I can't believe how much I'm enjoying this movie right now. Like, this might be one of the best like movies like this that I've seen in like years. And I feel like on that note too, in terms of like a comedy, Game Night is definitely like one of my favorite comedies ever made.
Love Game Night.
Yeah,
I think that's hysterical.
it's the acting in it is good. Like I just love the way it was filmed and everything. And there's a lot of that in this because again, it's John Francis Daley and I forget the other guy's name, but they and I knew like nothing about Dungeons and Dragons going into this movie, but there is a scene that is like this continuous one shot that is so well done that I was just like, wow, this is wild. Like it's a very good, very accessible movie. I'm gonna say it. Before this, I thought Chris Pine's like best movie was him as Kirk in Chris Pine's a great actor. I actually do very much enjoy Chris Pine. Like I thought, Don't Worry, Darling, I thought is worth watching Chris Pine in that movie. Very creepy, very good. But him in this movie is like on that level of Kirk 2009. Like so charming, so good, and it's fun, but it's fun and funny in a non-disrespectful way of its source material, but also realizing that it's dense material and how to, so like there's stuff for every person. Like they have made an excellent film, and I will tell anybody, go to the theater, watch this movie. It is 100% worth watching. It's so good.
Yeah, I had zero interest to watch that movie. And then after talking to everyone, I feel like number one, you don't need to know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, and you don't need to really be a fan of fantasy, which
Oh no,
I would
because
say
I'm not really. Yeah.
I would say that's the only. I love every genre, and fantasy is probably the one genre I have difficulty
It's my
watching.
sticking point, honestly. Like, I don't love Lord of the Rings. Like, I've seen them and they're fine, but like, I'm not gonna watch
Yeah,
the show. And I honestly, if there was another movie that came out, I probably wouldn't watch that either because I hated all the Hobbit movies. And I just thought, like, so and like, I know everybody says Game of Thrones is great, but I haven't watched it yet because it has that sort of sticking point where I'm like, yeah, but it's like
exactly.
fantasy, and it's like, but they're like, no, it's so accessible. So it's one of those, but like this was like, oh god, this is like the perfect pull you in movie. It's the same way. It's the same way where I say like Star Trek 2009. You could not have seen anything to do with Star Trek ever, and you could literally be like, I don't, or you've seen it and you were like, I don't like Star Trek, and you can still like that movie. I think, and so like
Yeah,
I think it's got that great like you've got to see it. You got to see it because it's fascinating too. It's good filmmaking in it too. It's like got a lot of really good like camera work.
I know, and that's what you're right. Game night was like that too. Like the part where you see the town and it looks like the game
Oh, I
pieces.
love that. I was thinking the Fabergé egg scene too, where they're like throwing the egg back and forth in the house, going from like,
Yeah.
because that's all one shot too.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's actually really a thoughtful movie for a comedy. Like and I think Rachel McAdams is one of the most underutilized comedic
Oh,
actresses. Like
100%.
she's fantastic. I love her in dramas. Like she can definitely do dramatic roles, but she is so funny. Eurovision, which I have a thing where I have a hard time with Will Ferrell sometimes in movies, but I watched it because she was in it, and she delivers this one line about elves that every time I hear it, I think it's the funniest, one of the funniest lines I've ever heard in a movie. Did you ever see that
I've seen it.
Eurovision?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
funny.
it's like it's fine, it's funny, but she is exceptionally good in that movie.
Oh yeah, she like I thought like I especially like the chemistry with her and Jason Bateman is so good in that. Like I love a Jason Bateman dry comedy moment, and he is stellar in that movie too. They all are. Honestly, the guy who plays kind of the idiot friend who's the evil brother from Ingrid Goes West, who's also in the Aladdin. He was like the other prince.
He's in so many random things. He played a Nazi in this movie I was watching called Survivor. I was like, what is happening right now?
He was in he was. Did you see No Time to Die?
Yes, he's in that.
I
Yes,
forgot he was in that too. I was like he was fighting somebody in another movie, and I was like, oh, it was Daniel Craig. Like, and he's good in that too.
Billy
It's
Master.
it's like Billy Masterson, not Masterson, or it's something like that though. You're right. Like Game Night is actually probably behind me somewhere, um, but yeah, he's so good in that movie. But then also, who's the guy that's married to Kirsten
Jesse Plemons. He
Jesse
is
Plemons?
hysterical. Like he plays it so straight. It is. I don't know how he
I
does
wonder
it.
the part with the thing with the dog where he's just always like, when they're like, oh, they were like, oh, you have a lot of chips, and they're like, oh, it was buy one get three free. I wonder how Frito Lay's could possibly maintain such a business model. Like his like whole like I love when he answers the door and he just like backs into the house, and then they're like, Ryan, you go, and he's like, I'm scared. It's just the whole thing, and then there's like a twist later too. It's like so good. It's just such a That's a movie that went under the radar that I wish had been bigger because I would have loved to have seen another one.
That's a movie I need to buy. Like that's on my list of wait for it to be on sale so I own that movie.
I think yeah, that was one that I literally like. I bought a bunch of I buy people like movies for Christmas, and so I was like I bought like three different copies for like three different households because my mom loves that movie. Like she watched it and was like, I can't believe I hadn't seen it. Like she loves it. Like it's definitely like it's one of my favorite comedies for sure. I was trying
Yeah.
to see, but well, I think maybe we should call it here because we've been doing this for about 2.5 hours now.
we can talk about movies. We have no problem with that.
No, this was a lot of fun, and I like the commentary in here. Like Lindsay is saying that she says that she loves "This Is Where I Leave You," and I remember that movie too because it's a loaded cast with Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, Adam Driver, Timothy Olyphant. Timothy Olyphant. Talk about an actor that's a great actor that can play it so many different ways. Because I don't know if you ever saw Santa Clarita Diet on Netflix with Drew Barrymore. Oh my God, it's so funny, but the problem is it kind of ends on like a cliffhanger, and then they canceled it after 3 seasons. So I was like, irate. Billy Masterson is no, that's the guy from Romeo and Michelle that they had a crush on. That's why I'm saying I think that you're right. Trey just said it, but yeah, no, I forget what I just said. Oh, This Is Where I Leave You. I remember watching that in the theater. I saw that in the theater. That was a fun one.
Yeah, that's a fantastic cast.
Jane Fonda's the mom, I think, in that, isn't she, or somebody? Yeah, it was like crazy.
And then Adam Driver's in the movie. It's like an odd group of people you wouldn't expect to be together, but they're actually really good. As an couple.
I watch Timothy Olyphant's kind of one of those people I'll watch anything with him in it, honestly, because I'm like, he is so hot, but he is also like such a good actor that I think hasn't gotten his due. Like I know Justified kind of got to put him on the thing, but like if you've never seen The Girl Next Door, that movie was not the movie I ever expected to be. I thought it was like a stupid comedy, like popcorn comedy, and my friend made me watch it one night, and it's like so good. Like, and he's in that.
Netflix? Was that Netflix movie?
That was from like 2004 to 2005. It's the girl from Happy Endings is the girl. It's like a porn star moves next door to this kid, and Emile Hirsch is the kid. And then Paul Dano. It was the first movie I saw with Paul Dano in it, and I was like, that guy's funny.
Do you remember Go?
I remember the movie. I never saw it though. Giovanni Ribisi.
Timothy Olyphant is.
Oh, I'll have to watch it now. Timothy Olyphant is the murderer in Scream 2.
Yeah.
That's why I love that. Also, though, like, he's just wild. And then he's the bad guy in Die Hard 4. He's in so many random things. Like,
and I do get him with Josh Duhamel sometimes.
No, I literally, sometimes I would be watching, like, there was this one movie. It was like a horror movie. And everybody all of a sudden starts, like, I know there's a scene on like a baseball field, and then everyone starts like attacking each other or something. And I was like, is this Josh Duhamel or Timothy Olyphant? Like I couldn't, because this was like, I remember watching it and I was like, it ended up being Josh Duhamel. I was like, oh, whoops.
Yeah, I know. The movie I could be thinking of, that Netflix movie, it might be Josh Duhamel. Like I can't tell the difference half the time.
It's once he got the gray hair, they both kind of looked exactly. They have the same. Honestly, somebody who's not casting them as brothers is really losing out here.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're gonna go because it's been a little bit, and I gotta walk the dogs, use the restroom and such, you know. But thank you, Alyssa, for doing this with me. I'm glad we got it sorted out. So now we know exactly what we'll do for next time, because I feel like this worked way better than what was happening.
And for me, so that was awesome. I could really hear everything.
Yeah. And good. I'm glad it wasn't like the doubling of sound or anything like that, and for you. Yeah. And so, and thank you everybody for joining us in this chat. And well, I'm sure we'll be back and doing this again if Alyssa will agree to it again.
But there are so few people who talk to movies. Talk to me.
I know that you and we would talk, and it would be like 5 a.m. before we knew. So,
because we'll just go from one thing to the next.
It's like a rolling thing, yeah. It's just hard because it's like you'll have this one thing, and now I said rolling thing, and I was like, we didn't talk about Indiana Jones at all, and I'm like, God, let's talk about Spielberg where we left it off.
We also do favorite directors. I was thinking about that.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, because I definitely have. Because there are some people who it's like I don't even have in my top 10, but like they consistently make movies that are some of my favorite movies. So.
I feel like there needs to be. This is how it starts. We started with favorite movies, and then we're going to whittle it down to like our favorite underrated movies, our favorite movies that nobody's ever seen, our favorite whatever. So I like the director one. Is fun. We should do the director one.
Maybe that's next.
Yeah.
We'll do that next.
Okay. So, okay. Okay, thank you everybody out there. Hold on. I got to read one more message in case this was meant to be... Okay, never mind. It wasn't for this. It was for something else, but it looked like it was in relation to this. And so I was like, I wanted to answer it before we left. It wasn't, but thank you everybody for joining us here, and we will see you later. Good night.